All right, we are ready to get started here. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Good afternoon. For the record, today is November 12th, 2022, and the time is 1:05 p.m. We are at the Mojave County Administration Building, located at 700 West Beale Street, Kingman, Arizona, 86401. This is the time and place for the public hearing on the director's order initiating proceedings to consider designating the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as an irrigation non-expansion area. My name is John Riggins. I'm the statewide planning manager at the Arizona Department of Water Resources, and I will be the hearing officer for today's hearing. Before we begin, I also want to take a minute to thank those of you who participated at our last public meeting here in September, on September 20th. We had a tremendous turnout, and I want to commend those of you who participated for being very respectful when providing questions and comments. I thought that provided a very helpful and respectful atmosphere, and I look forward to having another orderly and constructive hearing today. So with that, with me today from the department is Natalie Mast, AMA Director, who will provide an overview of the INA designation process, background, and regulatory features, and Emily LaDolce, Groundwater Modeling Section Manager. Emily will provide an overview of the hydrology in the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin. Also with me today from the department are Ryan Mitchell, Chief Hydrologist, Nicole Klobus, Chief Counsel, Shauna Evans, Public Information Officer, McKenna Welsh, Municipal Analyst, Sarah Lang, Hydrogeologist, David Lawler, Hydrogeologist, Lizette Fuentes, Legal Secretary, Jennifer Flores, Water Resource Specialist, Cole Peel, Water Resource Specialist, Teresa Johnson, Planning and Permitting Administrative Assistant, and Sharon Scantleberry, Docket Supervisor. Apparently we are having an issue with the audio on the webinar, so we will take a moment here to pause and correct this issue. All right, we will continue. I will also take this time to acknowledge any elected officials who are present at the hearing today. If there are any elected officials who want to be recognized, you can go ahead and stand at this time. You can introduce yourself if you'd like, similar to the, yeah.
State Senator Sonny Borelli, and I'm also the duly elected Senate Majority Leader in the next legislature.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Do we have any elected officials participating on the webinar? All right. Moving on. This public hearing will be recorded and will be the official record for the proceedings. The recording and WebEx transcript will be made available to ADWR's director and will be posted online as soon as they are available. There are also QR codes at the sign-in table that will direct you to the website where they will be posted, and I will provide the web address later on in this hearing. Are we on the agenda slide?
There, just
Okay, sorry about that. We're having a little technical issues between the WebEx and our slides. So you should be seeing the agenda slide now. At this hearing, ADWR will provide presentation on the public hearing process, an overview of the INA designation process, background and regulatory features, as well as an overview of the hydrologic information about the basin. Next slide, please. If anyone has any difficulty hearing me or a speaker today, please let me know. For those in person, if you haven't already done so, please sign in at the sign-in sheet on the table near the entrance. There are also speaker cards on that table. If you'd like to speak today, please fill out a speaker card if you haven't done so already, and submit your card to Sharon Scantlebury or any other staff present from ADWR. For those on the webinar, we have provided a link in the to a virtual speaker card in the chat box and on the screen. The chat box can be opened by clicking the speech bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. If you would like to speak via webinar today, submit your virtual speaker card and staff will call on you when it is your turn to speak. Everyone was muted upon entry into the webinar today. Please unmute yourself when it is your turn to speak. For those participating via telephone and not on the webinar, and you would like to make a verbal comment, please state and spell your name, and we will call on you when it is your turn to speak. If you would not like to make a comment, please simply stay silent. We will call on telephone participants to speak after webinar participants. Persons presenting comments at the hearing, whether in person or virtually, will be subject to a 3-minute time limit to allow time for as many speakers as possible during today's hearing. A list of speakers will be presented on the screen. We ask that you make your way to the podium when you see your name on the screen. For those who are in person but are in the overflow room, ADWR staff present in the overflow room are connected to the WebEx. Please indicate to that staff person that you are next in line to speak, and they will unmute their laptop and allow for your comments to be presented when it is your turn. Mojave County will also be posting a recording of this hearing on their YouTube channel. The department is not responding to anything posted through the comments on the Mojave County YouTube channel. So as I said, this hearing will be conducted in a formal manner. As I mentioned previously, this hearing is being recorded. A copy of the WebEx transcript of the hearing will be available for review at the department's office and will also be posted on the department's website when it is available. At the conclusion of this hearing, I'll be accepting any written comments or documentary evidence that anyone may wish to submit to the department regarding the proposed subsequent irrigation non-expansion area. The department will also accept written comments until 5 p.m. on November 18th, 2022. Written comments submitted up until 5 p.m. on November 18th, 2022 should be submitted to the department's docket supervisor, Sharon Scantlebury, by email to scantlebury@azwater.gov or fax at 602-771-8686. A copy of the public notice with Sharon's contact information is posted on the department's website, and her business cards are located at the table near the entrance if you would like one. Next slide, please. On June 23rd, 2022, the Mojave County Board of Supervisors requested that the ADWR director take whatever actions available and necessary to designate the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as a subsequent INA. The Board of Supervisors cited to updated USGS modeling and ongoing and extreme drought conditions as part of the basis for this request. By letter dated June 24th, 2022, the director indicated that ADWR would review updated modeling and other relevant information, including current and projected drought conditions, and received public comments on whether to initiate designation procedures. Next slide, please. On September 20th, 2022, the Arizona Department of Water Resources held a public meeting to present information on hydrology, preliminary results of groundwater modeling of current conditions, and accept public questions and comments on whether the Director of ADWR should initiate procedures to designate the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as an irrigation non-expansion area. In response to comments and questions received during the informal public meeting record period, ADWR updated its web page for this matter to include all comments received and a document addressing answers to specific questions, Those comments, questions, and answers can be found here at the web address shown on the slide and by scanning the QR codes that I mentioned previously. Next slide, please. The department received questions about water adequacy determinations issued for new subdivisions in the Hualapai Valley Basin. All water adequacy determinations in the Hualapai Valley Basin that groundwater would be physically available for 100 years were issued prior to the release of the USGS numerical models. The USGS numerical models provide more accurate information about the likely effects of additional pumping. Next slide, please. 53 water reports determining a 100-year water adequacy have been issued to landowners for proposed subdivisions. Of those 53 reports, 46 were issued as inadequate water supply reports, and 7 were issued as adequate water supply reports. The most recently issued adequate water supply report was issued in 1981 based on hydrologic information presented to ADWR at that time. An analysis of adequate water supply was issued in 2006 for Meridian Ranch based on the hydrology study completed in 2006, prior to the release of the USGS numerical models. In 2021, ADWR granted a second 5-year extension for this analysis. Under ADWR rules, ADWR may not consider hydrologic information in determining whether to grant the first and second 5-year extensions of an analysis. And that is pursuant to AAC R12-15-712, Section H. And AAC refers to the Arizona Administrative Code, where the official rules of the state of Arizona are published with the Secretary of State. I'll continue. 2 designations of adequate water supply were issued to the City of Kingman and Servat Water Company for demands within their service areas. Those designations were issued in 1973 and 1998, respectively, based on hydrologic information available at that time. Next slide, please. Based on hydrologic information and public comments received, the Director signed an order on October 12, 2022 to initiate procedures to consider designating the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as an INA. Yay. In the same order, the Director also ordered a public hearing. Today's public hearing is to receive evidence, both orally and written, as to the following. Is there insufficient groundwater supply to provide a reasonably safe supply for irrigation of the cultivated lands in the area at the current rate of withdrawal? Is the establishment of an active management area pursuant to ARS 45-412 not presently necessary? And should the department issue an order designating the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as a subsequent irrigation non-expansion area? Next slide, please. At today's hearing, the department will present the factual data in its possession in support of or in opposition to the proposed subsequent irrigation non-expansion area pursuant to ARS 45-435, Section C. Any person or authorized representative may appear at the hearing and submit oral or documentary evidence for or against the proposed action. Additionally, written comments not submitted at this hearing may be submitted by mail, email, fax, or hand-delivered until 5 p.m. on November 18th, 2022. Here we see the map of the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin that was included in the public notice. This map defines the boundaries of the groundwater basin that is subject to the proposed INA. Next, I will turn the hearing over to Natalie Mast, who will present an overview of the INA designation process, background, and regulatory features. Natalie?
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Mast, and I am the Active Management Areas Director at ADWR. I'll provide a presentation that explains the INA designation process and an overview of what an INA is and what is required in an INA, and some procedures related to the establishment of a subsequent INA. Next slide, please. On October 12th, 2022, when the director gave notice of the initiation of procedures to consider designating the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as an irrigation non-expansion area, a prohibition on additional irrigated acreage went into effect. Only lands that were irrigated at any time during the 5 years prior to the October 12th notice may be irrigated. If the director designates the area as an INA, this prohibition will become permanent. And if the director chooses not to designate an INA in the area, the prohibition would be lifted upon the director's findings for this matter. This public hearing is a part of the formal statutory process for the director to designate a subsequent INA, which began with the October 12th notice. As already mentioned, anyone can submit comment or evidence at this hearing, and the hearing record will remain open until 5 p.m. on November 18. Pursuant to statute, the director is required to issue written findings within 30 days of the hearing and is required to give full consideration to public comment and to recommendations made by political subdivisions. If the director finds that an INA should be created, he must issue an order designating the INA. The director's findings and order must be published once per week for 2 consecutive weeks in a newspaper of general circulation in the county, in this case, the Kingman Daily Miner, and the order is effective when published for the second time. The findings and order are subject to requests for rehearing or review and actions for judicial review, subject to specific statutory deadlines, excuse me. If an INA is established, a map of the area will be filed with the Mojave County Recorder. And you can see a map on the screen here and also by scanning the QR codes that are around the building. INAs carry restrictions on the expansion of historically irrigated acreage and require users of groundwater withdrawal authorities to report their water use to ADWR by March 31st of each calendar year in which water was used. The 1980 Groundwater Management Act created 2 irrigation non-expansion areas, the Joseph City INA in Navajo County and the Douglas INA in Cochise County. A ballot proposition as to whether to designate the Douglas Groundwater Basin as a subsequent active management area was on the November 8th ballot for residents of the basin. As of today, those results have not yet been certified. In 1982, the director designated the Harquahala INA as a subsequent INA as well. The INAs you can see on this map where they're located. Again, Joseph City in Navajo County in the kind of northeast part of the state, Harquahala in central Arizona, and the Douglas INA, which if that ballot measure passes, would be replaced by an AMA in southeastern Arizona. Arizona Revised Statute, Section 45-432, authorizes the director of ADWR to designate a groundwater basin or one or more subbasins as a subsequent INA if the director determines that both of the following apply. First, there is insufficient groundwater to provide a reasonably safe supply for irrigation of cultivated lands at current rates of withdrawal. And second, establishment of an AMA is not necessary. Criteria related to the designation of an AMA are that active management practices are necessary to preserve the existing supply of groundwater for future needs. Land subsidence or fishing is endangering property or potential groundwater storage capacity. Or use of groundwater is resulting in actual or threatened water quality degradation. In an INA, only lands irrigated during the 5 years preceding the establishment of the INA or the notice of initiation of proceedings to designate a subsequent INA by the director, only those lands may be irrigated with any water. In this case, if an INA is established, only lands irrigated during the 5 years prior to October 12th, 2022 may be irrigated going forward. Irrigate has a specific statutory definition and is defined as applying water to 2 or more acres of land to produce plants or parts of plants for sale or human consumption, and or for use as feed for livestock, range livestock, or poultry. There are 2 major exceptions here to this acreage prohibition. Previously established surface water rights is the first exception. And what that means is that acres of land that were not irrigated during the relevant 5-year time period may be irrigated with a decreed or appropriative surface water right established before the date of the notice initiating these proceedings. The other exception is substantial capital investment. If substantial capital investment was made for the subjugation of land for an irrigation use and construction was substantially commenced prior to October 12th, 2022, a person may request that the department consider those acres to be irrigable. This is a fact-intensive case-by-case analysis, and the department cannot make substantial capital investment findings or provide SCI interpretations prior to the establishment of an INA. In order to establish an irrigation authority in a subsequent INA, individuals will be required to submit documentation. The form you see on the screen now is an example of the type of form that would be used in a subsequent INA. This particular form is an example from the Harquahala INA. ADWR would take the information submitted and verify that information and issue an irrigation authority number or a 60 number. This irrigation authority number would be used for reporting purposes, allowing us to track that water use data over time. In an INA, the following wells must have a water measuring device: a non-exempt well, or a well with a pump that has a maximum capacity of more than 35 gallons per minute, withdrawing water for an irrigation use. And again, irrigation has a specific statutory definition of applying water to 2 or more acres to produce plants or parts of plants for sale or consumption. So a non-exempt well withdrawing water for an irrigation use, a non-exempt well withdrawing more than 10 acre-feet of groundwater for a non-irrigation use. In an INA, each person withdrawing groundwater from a non-exempt well must file an annual water use report with ADWR. ADWR has approved the use of devices and measuring methods other than the installation of meters, and details on those alternative methods can be found in the Arizona Administrative Code R12-15-903. These requirements do not apply to exempt wells or wells that have a maximum pump capacity of 35 gallons per minute or less and are used for a non-irrigation use. With that, I will hand it over to Emily LaDolce to provide information on hydrology in the basin.
Thanks, Natalie. Well, hi, my name is Emily LaDolce. I'm the Groundwater Modeling Section Manager at ADWR. I'm going to be talking about the hydrology in the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin. All right. Here is my agenda for today. For those of you who are at the September 20th meeting, it's going to look pretty familiar, but we have added some slides in response to the comments and questions that we received at that meeting. So hopefully there will be some new information to be interesting for people. And I've got about 20 or 30 minutes worth of content here. So just bear with me. Thank you. I'm going to start with a regional overview of the basin. I'm going to move into a schematic of the aquifer system. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the monitoring well trends that we've been able to observe. After that, I'm going to talk about the results of ADWR's groundwater modeling of current conditions using the 2021 USGS groundwater model. And then I'll wrap it up with the additional information on land subsidence and water quality that you saw last time. Oh, sorry. That's one thing before we move on from the previous slide. Sorry, Sharon. Just wanted to give a quick definition of what a groundwater basin is. So the map that I had up there next to the agenda was showing Mojave County in green, and then we saw the black outlines of the groundwater basins. And these are physically, they're defined areas. They have a bottom and a sides, and they contain groundwater within saturated alluvial sediments. These are sands, gravels, silts, anything that eroded off the mountains and were deposited millions of years ago. And it fills up the basin, and then you have the groundwater within those sediments. The other thing is that the boundaries of all groundwater basins in the state are written into Arizona statute. So besides having a physical significance, there's also a statutory significance. Okay, and now what we're looking at, or what we have been looking at, is an aerial photo of the Hualapai Valley Basin. It's outlined in blue. The southern part is towards the bottom of your screen, and then as you move north, that's where you can see the Colorado River and Lake Mead. The sides of this basin are the mountains. So you've got the Hualapai Mountains in the south, the Serpent Mountains in the west, Music Mountains in the east. And then, like I mentioned, Lake Mead and the Colorado River form the northern boundary of this basin. Elevation ranges from over 8,000 feet above mean sea level in the Hualapai Mountains in the south, all the way down to about 1,000 feet above mean sea level by Lake Mead in the north. You have washes that flow in response to storm events, but there's no perennial surface water in the area. And what this means is that groundwater is your only constant source of water. The climate is arid to semi-arid, so you can see anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of precipitation down in the valley as rain, and then up in the mountains you can get up to 17 inches a year, and that comes down as rain and snow. All right, now I'm going to talk about the Hualapai Valley Aquifer. So the map you're seeing shows the same area. I've got the basin outlined in blue. It's not showing up very well, but hopefully you can kind of see it. The mountains are brown, and then the gray represents those sediments. So that's where the aquifers are going to be. Now, on the previous slide, I mentioned that these basins are like bathtubs that are filled up with sediment. And so the contours that you're seeing on this map they're showing depth to bedrock, and that tells you how deep those sediments are. There's a difference between sediment thickness and aquifer thickness, which we'll see in a minute. And to illustrate this, I've got a cross section that goes from A to A prime across the Hualapai Valley. And we pulled this out of the groundwater model, so you can also get a little sneak peek at how that's discretized. What you can see is that the edges of the basin are quite thin, I mean, on the order of just 100 feet or so. And then as you move to the center of the basin, it gets really deep, over 10,000 feet deep at the deepest, which is found near the Red Lake Playa area. Now, the blue in the cross-section represents those saturated sediments, in other words, the groundwater. And so you can see that we've got about 3 pieces of information on this cross-section. The total thickness of the sediments, which is your top to bottom thickness. You've got the saturated thickness of the aquifer, which is the blue area. And then you've got depth to water, and that's from the top of the land to the top of the blue. And that tells you how far below land surface you'll have to go before you find water. Natural recharge is coming into this area from washes like Truxton Wash or the Hualapai Valley Wash. And it's also coming in as precipitation that falls in the mountain region. Anything that doesn't evaporate or get used by plants is eventually going to flow through the ground and end up in the aquifer. Depth to water ranges from about 300 to 700 feet below land surface, depending on where you are. And then finally, the groundwater is flowing from the south to the north. Groundwater does move underground. It's pretty slow, but it will typically move from areas of higher elevation to lower elevation. So in the Hualapai Valley, that's moving from the mountains to the center of the valley, and from the higher elevation south to the lower elevation north. All right, so after that overview, I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about monitoring well trends. I'm going to start off with the 3 example monitoring wells that you saw back in September. And then in response to some of the comments that we got at that meeting, we took a look at the monitoring wells throughout the basin on a more as a whole, as a group. And so I'm also going to get into a little bit of those results. All right, but starting with these 3 examples, these 3 they're wells from ADWR's index line, and that's a group of monitoring wells that we maintain all over the state and regularly visit to collect water level data from. The index wells are shown, those are the dots on the map. The 3 wells that we're going to look at have a really nice long period of record. That's the amount of time that we've been collecting data from them. And this helps give us an understanding of groundwater conditions over time. Okay, as I go through these slides, I also want to point out that there's a website up there. That's where our data are available publicly. So if you want to go check it out on your own afterwards, that's the website to go to. All right, so let's take a look at this hydrograph. A hydrograph is just a graph that shows water levels over time. Our time scale is on the x-axis. It goes from 1960 to 2022. And our water level scale on the y-axis goes from 500 feet to 700 feet below land surface. This well is near Kingman, near the south of the basin, and what you see is that it has like a steadily declining trend over time. All right, here's our second hydrograph. This is showing water levels from a well near the central eastern portion of the basin. It's pretty close to Truxton Wash. It's got the same time scale, same water level scale. And this well has a couple interesting things about it. It's declining until about the 1990s, and then it starts to stabilize. And when you see a well stabilize, it could mean that you have about the same amount of water going into the aquifer as you do coming out. And that's reflected in the flat line on that hydrograph. Then in the mid-2000s, you see the water level bump up. And this happens when you have more water coming into the aquifer than going out. And since this well is close to Truxton Wash, maybe it was responding to a really heavy storm that finally made its way down to the aquifer. And then starting in about 2010, the water levels go back to declining. I'm going to take a quick water break, sorry. Okay, in a couple slides, I'm going to talk about regional water level trends. And before I go there, I want to take a second while we're here to talk about how hydrologists think about trends over time. The time period can make a big difference. And this well is great because it's got regular measurements going back to the 60s. But what if we only had the first and the last measurement? Click, please. Oh, there it is. Okay. So In this case, we'd still see that downward trend. So I've highlighted the first and the last and then drawn a straight line in between them. But we would miss the part in the middle where it flattened out and increased. All right, and then what if we only had measurements from, say, 1990 to 2000? You would probably conclude that water levels were stable in this well. And if you only had measurements from 1990 to 2010, you might think that the water levels in this well were rising. And so in a lot of the wells that we're going to be looking at, we don't have the amount of regular measurements that you're seeing here. So we have to be careful not to come to the wrong conclusions about what's happening. I'll talk more about that in a bit, but I just wanted to introduce the idea to everyone since this well gives us such great data to work with. Okay, and then here's our last well. This is up in the northern part of the basin. It's right off of Pierce Ferry Road. A couple things to say about this well. It's got a completely flat trend over that 60-year period, which tells us that the balance of water in the aquifer in that area is pretty much equal. And the other thing to note is the depth to water. It's at like 660 feet below land surface, where if you notice from the previous ones, those were closer to 520 feet below land surface. So I mentioned on the other slide that the groundwater is flowing from the south to the north, and that tells us that like the absolute elevation of the groundwater in the north is going to be lower than what you have in the south, just so that it can gravity flow down. But if your land surface is roughly the same, it means you have to go deeper to hit water. Okay, finally something different. So one of the comments we heard from the public meeting in September was that people had observed rising water levels at their wells. And we wanted to look into this more. So we took a look at ADWR's groundwater site inventory database for the Hualapai Valley to see what data are available to look at trends. The gray dots that you're seeing up on the screen, those are all of our GWSI wells. The groundwater site inventory is that acronym. And there's hundreds of these wells. The index wells that I showed you earlier are part of this data set, but aside from index wells, we also have other ones. But a lot of these don't have enough measurements or recent measurements to look at trends. Like I said before, we want to make meaningful conclusions about what we're looking at, so we filtered the available data to only look at wells that had at least one measurement in the last 10 years and at least 2 measurements since 2000. In other words, we scrubbed measurements from a long time ago. And here's what we were left with. There's about 49 wells scattered across the basin where we were able to look at recent water level trends. So up on the map, the red circle means the well has a declining trend. The yellow triangle means that it's static or flat, and the blue square means that there's a rising water levels. So generally what we're seeing is that there's more decline in the south, which isn't super surprising because that's where the concentrated demands right now are. And there are also some rising water levels interspersed with the declines. So you can see maybe by the Long Mountain area, there's a couple blue squares. We looked at a couple of these because we wanted to see what was happening. And they seem to be responding to local development. For example, in the middle, there's a subdivision and some green space that we thought could be providing local recharge to the aquifer and responsible for some rising water levels. But in the whole, you're seeing more red. It's okay, Sharon, you can stay there. Beat me to it. So another way to look at this instead of on the map is in a bar chart to see, how many of each category you have. And so what we have, that's what you're seeing right now is that bar chart. About 67% of the wells had declining trends, 24% had a static trend, and 8% of the wells were rising. Okay, so that brings me to the groundwater modeling. One thing that we had heard from people after the September meeting was that they were a little confused about what model we had used for our modeling and how much agricultural development and water use we had in the model. So in the next few slides, I hope to clear that up for everyone. Starting with how we did the modeling, which is what this slide is about. We used the 2021 Hualapai Valley groundwater model that was developed by Jake Knight and others at the USGS. Mojave County provided a couple years of updated municipal pumping data from Kingman, so we incorporated those values. And then we used the field verification survey information from Amy Reed and others at the USGS to revise the agricultural demand. And we were just looking at the latest year that was available, which ended up being 2021. In a couple slides, I'll have a visual to show you where that ag demand is modeled and how much of it is modeled. But when we get there, we'll get there. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Here we go. Last thing on this slide is I want to say that there was no future growth in any sector. So that was really important for our modeling. We took 2021 and we just ran it out into the future. And that's, per statute, which is up on the screen. Okay, so this slide is going to look a little bit familiar for you who are here in September, but I want to do a quick overview of what went into the groundwater model. This is the inflows, and inflows are adding water to the aquifer or recharging it. And so the map is going to overlay some colors that'll show you where the inflows to the model exist. Starting with incidental recharge, there's about 3,000 acre-feet per year that goes in. This comes from pipe leakage, septic fields, or like that green space that I mentioned on the previous slide. We've got natural recharge, which is coming off of the mountain fronts and the washes, and that accounts for about 4,200 acre-feet per year. There's enhanced recharge from the city of Kingman. This is their effluent return flows. And also there's there's some enhanced stormwater recharge. And that all adds up to about 2,300. Actually didn't add it up on the slide. But in total, the inflows are roughly 10,000 acre-feet per year. All right, and then outflows, taking water out of the model. We also call these demands when you're talking about like a sector like municipal demand or agricultural demand. Starting with domestic and industrial, that's about 5,400 acre-feet per year. Then we've got natural discharge, which is when the groundwater flows underground and exits that northern side of the basin. That's about 4,300 acre-feet per year. Municipal pumping, those are the red dots down in the south, that's about 8,800 acre-feet per year. And agricultural pumping as a net value is 25,800 acre-feet per year. And the net part just means that we've accounted for the return flow. So it's total pumped minus what might be going back into the ground after it's applied to the field. And the outflows are total about 44,000 acre-feet per year. Okay, so here's the slide where I'm going to talk about where the modeled agricultural withdrawals are. So that's what you're seeing on the map. So again, we're using the field verification data from the USGS. They do a really great job estimating groundwater demands all over the state. In most places in Arizona, people aren't required to report the amount of groundwater that they use, but it's still important for hydrologists to have an estimate of what's coming out so that we can, support planning and stuff. Because we don't have reported values, the USGS has stepped up with some funding from ADWR to provide these estimates. They use aerial photography to find irrigated fields, and then they actually drive out to the field to see what's being grown and what the irrigation methods are. Then they use that data to calculate how much water the plants would need to survive. And so that's what you're seeing on the screen here. It's the location of the mapped fields plus the calculated plant water requirements. And again, it's the net value, so we are accounting for efficiency. And the color coding up there goes from orange is the least demand to dark green is the highest. And I'm just going to step through 3 areas here with exact values. So starting at the top, the northern section is 1,300 irrigated acres. It's using drip and bubbler micro irrigation. It's got an assumed 90% irrigation efficiency, and the crop is orchards. And this section of ag demand is 3,200 acre feet per year. And then I've put in parentheses that same number in gallons per minute in case that's more familiar for people. All right, in the middle of the basin, we've got 6,600 irrigated acres, and that uses a mix of overhead sprinklers and drip micro irrigation. These methods have an 80 to 90% efficiency. The crops are a mix of orchards, grass, and veggies, and the groundwater demand is 8,900 acre feet per year. And then in the southern section, this has 5,900 irrigated acres, all with drip micro irrigation and an assumed 90% irrigation efficiency. The crops are a mix of orchards, vines, and veggies, and this area uses an estimated 13,700 acre feet per year. All right, so those last slides were talking about what numbers went into the groundwater model, and now I want to talk about what the results were after we ran it out for 100 years with the current conditions that I just went through. Like before, we're going to show model results in terms of depth to water below land surface. And so the cube here is to illustrate that idea. We've got a well sunk into the aquifer, and the colors are going to indicate how deep the groundwater is. The greens indicate that the water is closer to the surface, anywhere from 100 to 500 feet below land. Yellows show that it's starting to get deeper, from like 600 to 700 feet below land surface. Oranges are even deeper, 800 to 1,000 feet below ground surface, and then the reds will be your deepest, from 12,000 to 17, I'm sorry, did I say 12,000? I meant 1,200 to 1,700 feet below land surface. Okay. So these are the same modeling results that you saw back in September. We had called it preliminary back then. We went and looked at what we did. We're good with it. I just recolored everything. Got some feedback that the oranges and purples were kind of hard to look at. So here we go, green to red. We're going to look at the results from 3 years. Starting year was 2021, 50 years from now, and then 100 years from now. So this is the model depth to water throughout the Hualapai Valley Basin at present. A couple things to point out. In general, your greatest depth to water is in the south of the basin near Kingman, and the shallowest depth to water is in the middle, near the Red Lake Playa. Around the edges of the model, you're going to see greens right next to dark reds, and I just would say I wouldn't pay too much attention to that because it's an artifact of the surface elevation, kind of like I mentioned on a previous slide. And that's just translating to a lot of variation in our model depth as you move into those mountains and foothills area. So on this slide, we really want to focus on places where things are changing over time. Okay, so here's after 50 years of pumping at current levels. You can see that water levels in the south have declined, and there has also been a general gradual draining of the center of the basin as groundwater is removed. And here's the model depth to water after 100 years. The water levels in the south have declined more and are now down to about 900 to 1,000 feet around New Kingman Butler. There's a patch down by the Kingman Airport that's modeled at over 1,200 feet below land surface. And the gradual draining of the center of the basin has continued. Water levels to the north are less impacted, but there has been a decline of a couple hundred feet over that 100-year time frame. Okay, so now that we've looked at depths to water, we wanted to ask the question, how does this compare to existing well depths? So we started by looking at all the existing registered wells in the basin that included a reported well depth in the record, and that's what you're looking at in that map. So we've got exempt wells are colored orange, non-exempt wells are pink. Any non-exempt well that listed irrigation as a water use, we colored green, and the other ones are colored yellow. Others would be like an environmental monitoring well or something. There's not a whole lot of those. Okay. Sorry, Natalie defined what a non-exempt well was. I was about to do it here, but I don't need to repeat her. So we overlaid the 100-year model depth to water with the registered wells. So that's what this is showing. And then we intersected the reported well depth with the modeled depth to water. And we looked at this in a couple different ways, starting with, how many wells go completely dry. And then we thought about it and it's like, well, the question that we really want to know is, are the wells usable? And if you have a well, you have to have some water in it to pump. If it's down at the bottom of the well, it's already kind of, not usable to you. So we wanted to assume that there was a little bit of a water column so that the well would be either pumpable or not pumpable. Let's see here. Okay, sorry. The amount of water that you're gonna need, that water column, it's gonna vary depending on how much water you're trying to pump and how deep you have to pump it. So we looked at it with both like a 50 feet of water in your well and 100 feet of water in your well. And I'm gonna be showing results from that 100-foot water column assumption, because the other thing is you're not going to put your pump down at the very bottom of the well. It'll be up a little bit. Anyway, we found that after 100 years, about 1 in 20 existing wells would not be pumpable at the projected modeled depths to water. And it was pretty similar for the 50-foot, just so you know. And the red dots on the screen are showing the locations of those wells. So again, those are existing wells that we are, estimating would not be pumpable given the projected depths to water after 100 years. A lot of these are located in the south, which is not super surprising given that that's the area where we see the greatest declines. But you also have a scattering of not pumpable wells in the center and north parts of the basin. All right, and we were also curious to know what types of wells were at risk here, and that's what this pie chart is showing. We took the group of wells that we estimate won't be pumpable and then sorted them by reported water use. And what you see is that about 64% of the not pumpable wells are currently used for domestic and stock. About 21% of them are currently used for agriculture. 8% of them are used for municipal, and then the last 7% is for commercial or other uses. All right, we're coming to the end of my slides, and I just want to thank you all for your attention so far. I know it's been a lot of information to take in. The last 2 points are about the Hualapai Valley Basin involving land subsidence and water quality. So starting with land subsidence, this is what happens when groundwater is pumped out of the aquifer, and the aquifer literally collapses on itself because the water isn't there anymore to hold it up. The picture on the screen is from Eloy, Arizona. It's showing where the land surface was in 1952, which is the sign floating in the air, and then where the land surface was as of 2018. ADWR monitors subsidence all over the state. We use a couple different methods. One method is microgravity surveys. And that involves going out to the field with some equipment and running lines. And let's see, the other example. Oh, sorry, we're waiting for clicks. There we go. The picture, it's not a microgravity survey, but it is a well that was installed, and then you can see the surface pad was poured, and then the land subsided, leaving the pad up in the air. It's a pretty good measure of that change. So the other way that we monitor subsidence is with INSAR data, and that covers the entire state. It's satellite data from NASA. And it's a great way to identify areas that are subsiding. The picture on the screen is a fissure that's also in the Queen Creek area. All right, the takeaway for the Hualapai Valley Basin, though, is that currently we're not seeing any subsidence happening here. All right, water quality is another consideration. The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality collected groundwater samples all over the basin about 20 years ago and analyzed them for chemical components. This is the most recent data we have. Their results showed that the groundwater is slightly alkaline, fresh, and hard. There are some elevated nitrate concentrations. And finally, the large salt deposit underneath the Red Lake Playa contributes to high TDS in that area, which is probably not a surprise to any of you with wells up there. All right. So that is it for my slides. To summarize everything that I just talked about, at the current rates of withdrawal, depth to groundwater is projected to increase. The largest declines are seen in the south of the basin, near Kingman and Valley Vista, and we also see the depth to water exceeding 1,200 feet near the Kingman Airport. After 100 years of pumping at current levels, we estimate that about 1 in 20 existing wells will no longer be pumpable. And for the basin as a whole, outflows are currently exceeding inflows by a factor of 4. I added this slide with our sources so that if anyone is looking at this from the website afterwards, it'll be easy to find. And that's it for hydrology. Thanks for listening, and I'm going to turn it back over to John.
All right. Yes, thank you, Emily. So we will now move into the public comment portion of the hearing. We recognize that there may be strong opinions on the potential designation of an INA, and we ask for your cooperation with our efforts to conduct this hearing in an orderly fashion. We will project the names of the individuals who have filled out speaker cards in the order that they were received. When the time comes near for your name to be called, please make your way to the podium or indicate to the ADWR staff member in the overflow room. We'd like to ensure that only 3 to 4 people stand in line so that we can keep the aisles relatively clear. Therefore, please wait to come down until you see that there are only 2 to 3 people ahead of you to speak. While members of the public were entering the auditorium, we tried to ask that those with limited mobility seat themselves near the front of the auditorium so that we can more easily bring them the microphone. If you have difficulty moving towards the front of the room, please raise your hand when your name is called, and a member of the department staff will bring you a microphone. For those attending virtually, we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. We ask for your cooperation in respecting the time limitations. We'll enforce this limitation and will move to the next speaker once the time limitation has expired. We ask that others refrain from talking while the speaker is speaking and the speaker direct his or her comments or questions towards the panel here rather than to other members in the public. And I thought at our September meeting that with a few exceptions, the speakers did a good job of directing those comments to the panel here, and I'll look for that same respectful manner of comments today. If you have not already done so, please sign one of the sign-in sheets located at the table near the entrance of the auditorium. If you would like to provide oral comments or ask questions today, you will need to fill out a speaker card also located on the table near the entrance of the auditorium. We will also have speaker cards available for people in the overflow room. Please coordinate with the ADWR staff in the overflow room if you would like to submit comment. Once you have filled out a speaker card, please provide it to Sharon or any other ADWR staff member. For those attending virtually, a link to the virtual speaker card has been provided in the chat feature of the WebEx. If you wish to provide comments, please click the link, fill out the form, and submit it to be placed on the list of speakers. We will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you wish to provide comments virtually, you must do so utilizing the ADWR webinar link featured on the formal public hearing notice. The director will also consider written comments. Written comments may be submitted in person, by mail, email, or fax by 5 p.m. November 18th, 2022. Written comments should be sent to Sharon Scantleberry, Arizona Department of Water Resources. Sharon's mailing address is 1110 West Washington, Suite 310, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. Her email address is scantleberry@azwater.gov, and her fax number is 602-771-8686. Sharon's business card also can be picked up as you enter or exit the auditorium if you have not done so already. The department can accept written statements or questions today as well. Those should be provided to Sharon. So we have, it is currently 2:06. We have a lot of time allotted for public comment. So I'm going to take about a 10-minute break so that we can collect any speaker cards. If you have not already done so, you can pick up a speaker card at any of the places I just mentioned, return it to ADWR staff or to Sharon, and we will pick this hearing back up and reconvene at about 2:16. So thank you. We'll take a quick break. right, we're going to be getting started here in a minute, so if you could find your way back to your seat, we'll get started with the public comment. All right, well, I'm going to get us started here. I believe we have quite a few comments, which is great, and I look forward to hearing them. We have until 5 o'clock, so I'd like to get as many speakers in as we can. Again, please be respectful of the time frame. That way we can get as many people to provide comments as possible. I'm also just going to probably reassess at the top of the hour or every hour about any breaks. We'll probably just do a quick break just so we're not sitting here until 5 o'clock. But so as I mentioned too, we're going to be accepting comments and questions today. We will not be answering questions during the hearing today. We did receive a robust amount of questions that we provided answers to from our September meeting. A lot of that information is located on the department's webpage. You can access that via the QR code, and that provides a lot of good questions and answers from the last hearing and after the hearing as well. So to the public comments today, for those participating via telephone and not on the webinar who would like to make a verbal comment, please state and spell your name now, and we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you would not like to make a comment, please simply stay silent. We will call on telephone participants to speak after the webinar participants. So we will unmute telephone participants now. Do we have? We have none. That was easy. All right, so that moves us to the in-person speaker cards, which I believe we have quite a few. Please be advised that those presenting comments at the hearing, whether in person or virtually, will be subject to a 3-minute time limit to ensure all who wish to speak receive an opportunity to do so. We will now begin calling the names of the persons who filled out speaker cards here in person. If you wish to speak and have not filled out a speaker card, please fill one out at the table near the entrance and submit it to any AWR staff or to Sharon here at the front. When we call your name, please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, identify any person or entity that you represent, and then give your comments. After you have completed your comment, please exit back to your seat so that we can rotate through the additional speakers. So our first speaker.
We have a list of the speaker cards that we've received up on the screens. I'll also call 3 names at a time so you have a heads up that your name is coming up on the list. So please do be prepared to make your way to the podium. Can you zoom in on that? We'll work on making that a little bit bigger for you all. There we go. All right, so the first name that I have on the list is Alan Barbarich, then it will be Steve Schmidt, then Wayne Hollins.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to say thank you to all the veterans for your service after this Veterans Day. My name is Alan Barbarich. I own the farm at 22583 North Pierce Ferry Road, which was the farthest north farm shown on the demonstration there. That's up in the Gregg Sub-Basin, which I'd like to point out has no impact on the water supplies of Kingman or the surrounding communities of Meadview, Dolan Springs, White Hills. They all draw their water from separate basins. Up there, we've been shown to have far in excess of a 200-year supply of water, and that's with assumptions of far greater water than what we are using or will ever use. In full transparency, we and some of the other farms voluntarily provided our exact water use to the best of our knowledge, and they are in our case, far less than what was modeled in the ADWR model that Ms. LaDolce presented. And in some cases, the modeled usage on some farms was 5 times greater than the actual usage. So there's some dramatic discrepancies. We've also done voluntarily put in recharge basins. Here's a picture of one of our recharge basins there that we've done. And you can see it's a virtual lake that we put that back into the ground because we can collect it from the neighboring property. I can confidently say that I don't think anybody in this room wants some of the things that have been feared, which is 50 or 60,000 acres of farmland in this valley. None of the farmers want that, and none of the rest of the community wants that. In closing, I'd like to suggest 3 things. First, that the INA be turned down, at least for now. Second, I think the geology and hydrology should be studied further, particularly with respect to the different subbasins. The subbasins were delineated in 1984, and I think there's been a lot more study done since that point, showing that they are distinct and could be treated separately under the ADWR statutes if they're delineated. And finally, I think that the farming interests and as well as ADWR and elected officials should sit down at a table and try and work out some solutions to that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Steve Schmidt. After that is Wayne Hollins and Tony Reed.
Good afternoon. My name's Steve Schmidt, and I'm thankful that you gave us this opportunity again to express some of our concerns about the INA. And I'm the farmer for Alan Barbridge that on the end of the valley there. And he mentioned that we went out and we did a voluntary study of how much water. We have water meters on all of our wells. And we took our water meters, we took our fuel consumption, we took everything and applied it so that everything came out correctly on our water usage and made sure there wasn't something misreading or anything. And I think there's been a paper report probably filed that shows our actual water use, which is a lot less than what the model is. And people might ask why that. Part of it is we have a monsoon here, which helps with our watering. It takes us, this year we had about 4 to 6 weeks. We didn't hardly irrigate at all, very, very little. And our crops grow a little bit quicker here because of their UV rays. And so that shortens our growing season, our watering days. Plus, a lot of data is formulated out of the San Joaquin Valley on trees and their growing period and our growing period, types of soil, different things fluctuate from that. And also, a lot of that is done with the older, you might say, root growth and root stock. Today we have a more modern tree that is more temperate in its water. We can get better crops with less water. And so I think that if we could everybody could just re-examine the actual use that we're using, I think it would surprise people. I know modeling is only as good as the information, but as Ellen said, we're open to give you all the information that we have. You can come look at our water meters. You can come look at how we water. The public wants to come see it, we can show you. There's nothing hidden there. And I'm there as a family. We have all my children on that farm. I have 9 grandchildren, and we're hoping this is our place where we're going to make home. And so I'm not in favor of INA at this time, like Ellen said. Maybe there's some discussion that needs to be done and talked about, and a proper way to proceed that would maybe down the road limit things, but leave things open for now and see if everybody could be moderate in our assumptions and our growth.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Wayne Hollins, then Tony Reed, then Jean Bishop.
Wayne Hollins, Hollins. I'm speaking against the INA at this time. Seems to be we're making problems when we don't really have the problems. The Hualapai Aquifer covers 1,820 square miles. If we get just 1 inch of rain, that's 97,000 acre feet. So if we're only short 30,000 acre feet, then maybe we should work harder at putting more water into the ground since it's not naturally going there. And we can also do things up in the drainages to slow down that water so it has more of a chance to infiltrate. But I don't think we have any structures up there to do that. So unless we're doing as much as we can to put the water into the ground, keeping people from taking it out of the ground, it doesn't mean anything. So why have a problem when the problem is we're not doing the maximum that we can do? And it's not only the city and the county, but it's also the residents that live here and in that area to do what they can to put the water in the ground too. And there's things that the county's got a manual, tell them how to do that. All they need to do is get some instructions how to do it and maybe some incentive to do it, and they can help put the water into the ground. So I just don't see restricting taking the water out is really going to be sufficient. We also got to look at the soil health. If we have poor soil health, it could rain 100 inches a year and you'd still be in the same situation. The water's got to be able to get into the ground, and you got to have good soil health. So we need to improve on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Tony Reed, then Jean Bishop, then Aubrey Green.
Hi, good afternoon. Tony Reed representing myself, a new transplant to Kingman here. Certainly you want to thank the ADWR for all the work you've done. I was very interested in the hydrology reports. Oh, sorry. Anyway, thank you again for all the work the ADWR has done. I'd like to say that my wife and I are in favor of the INA, at least temporarily, to gain more information, to perhaps improve the modeling, as some of the other speakers have already talked about. I'm 41 years retired now from aerospace, and information is always a better idea. So I'd certainly like to see that and encourage the commission to also put together workshops on some of the other topics that the other speakers have also talked about in terms of enhanced recharge and whatnot. It's certainly fascinating to me. So anyway, thank you very much, and do encourage the INA for right now.
Thank you.
Next up is Jean Bishop, then Aubrey Green, then Chris Stevens.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Mojave County. My name is Jean Bishop. I'm a lifelong resident of Mojave County, your District 4 County Supervisor and the current president of the County Supervisors Association of Arizona. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, and God bless our farmers and our ranchers. And I think communications is very important to this discussion. So I spoke during the public meeting held September the 20th in this very same auditorium. And I remain deeply concerned over this issue and supportive, as a portion of the Hualapai Valley Basin is in my district, and I want to ensure that the community has access to clean, plentiful, and affordable water. I'm here again today to strongly encourage ADWR to use its authority to designate the Hualapai Basin as an INA. With decades of non-groundwater management, prolonged drought, and heightened fire dangers, ADWR needs to do the right thing and designate this basin. This will give our community confidence that they will continue to have access to water to support future generations. For agriculture and wells, Mojave County really has no say in the land use approval process. There's no reporting guidelines on how much water these wells pump, how deep the wells can be, or how many wells these parcels can have. This leaves Mojave County at a severe disadvantage when it comes to planning for growth and economic economic prosperity. The decisions regarding wells and agriculture are left up to you. We know our county. Our general plan lays out how we see our county growing and prospering. Our plan does not anticipate large-scale farming or irrigation. However, by not having this basin designated as an INA, the county and its taxpayers will be the ones left holding the bag when the basin reaches critical levels because of large-scale agriculture. What happens when the basin reaches critical levels? Well, unfortunately, the county taxpayers will bear the burden of higher water costs and potential tax increases to pay for deeper wells, or they'll be faced with having no water. Right now, the cost associated with drilling a new well is very costly, but can you imagine just what the cost will look like in the future? This can all be avoided. We have a chance of preventing this by having ADWR designate the Hualapai Basin as an INA, giving us the necessary management tools needed to ensure Mojave County has water for years to come, and that our region will continue to grow in the way that we have planned. I strongly urge you to consider designating the Hualapai Basin as an INA. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next is Aubrey Green, then Chris Stevens, then Dennis Macklin.
Good afternoon. I'm Aubrey Green, and I represent various landowners in Red Lake. We're here to currently oppose the INA because we don't believe ADWR has fully analyzed all the studies available to it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Chris Stevens, then Dennis Macklin, then Randy Perry.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Stevens, and I represent multiple landowners and lenders in the northern part of the Hualapai Basin. By way of background, I have it's been nearly 20 years of working on various projects in this basin, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure is we really are not sure why there has been such an emphasis on, I mean, I guess it feels to me that this is being pushed through in a very quick manner, where we're essentially here on a Saturday on Veterans Day weekend, and then in the... Boy, I don't see how that reset itself.
No, you have time. You have plenty of time.
So,
you have 2 minutes still.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, essentially we're here on a Veterans Day weekend in a, after the election, but before the new governor is put in place to try to, it looks to me like slam through an INA in an area that has had extensive study. And I know that you've talked about the USGS geological studies. I will tell you, and you have in your files, and I have right here one of them, but in 2007, starting in 2004, clients of mine have spent in the neighborhood of 10 times what was spent on the USGS study. Many, many millions of dollars that went into the Errol Montgomery reports that are in your files. We had 5 analyses of adequate water supply approved in this basin alone, well over 100,000 acre feet for 100 years. I've got one of them here. This one's at 40,000 acre feet. But the question that I have is that Errol Montgomery study clearly shows, even though I do know that the basins were designated by statute, but that there is both a granite and a clay dome in between the upper basin and I'll call the upper basin, but it's the southernmost, and the lower basin, which is the northernmost portion, that they really showed in that study that they were not connected. And I understand the city of Kingman's need to make sure that it's got adequate water to see growth well into the future. But I also don't believe that the sub-basins and or separate, looking at it as separate basins has really even been analyzed. We donated to the USGS study back in, I want to say 07, 06, but that was a $250,000 study. And then I know they updated it, but nothing near the detail that was done by the Errol Montgomery. So anyway, we oppose it this time and would just ask that it slow down so that all of the research that DWR has could be looked at.
Thank you.
Up next is Dennis Macklin, then Randy Perry, then Tim Walsh.
Hi, my name's Dennis Macklin. I don't really represent anyone except my two wells that I own. And if they're going down, then I want that protected. I think we probably do need the INA, where you need some kind of control. We need to watch what we are using. There's been a lot of numbers thrown around. Who do we believe? I don't know. I do know that figures don't lie, but liars can figure. So keep that in mind. I think we need to do something to protect our water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Randy Perry, then Tim Walsh, then Ryan Swap.
My name is Randy Perry. I'm just a resident of Kingman. And I don't know if Mojave County or the Arizona Water Authority has had their head in the sand or what, but for 30 years we've been in a drought. That's all we hear is drought, conserve water, and yet you've got wells that are pulling as much water as they can out of the ground without any metering on it or charge or anything. I know if I use too much water, they charge me. So, you got to have, I don't know if you have to have an INA or whatever you have to have, but you have to have some restrictions. Otherwise, you got all these foreign corporations coming in there, and they're going to have nothing but these farms, and none of that food is for here or anything's for here. So you got to have some way of monitoring and restricting wells somehow, because all we hear is drought, 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 but yet you're allowing these wells just to go goofy. So you got to have some kind of controls. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Tim Walsh, then Ryan Swap, then Kim Mitchell.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Walsh. I'm the Development Services Director for Mojave County. I'm also a resident of Kingman and the Hualapai Aquifer. The health of the Hualapai Aquifer is something that Mojave County has been concerned with for quite some time. Once the farms began coming into the basin, we've worked diligently to understand the impact that they would have on the aquifer. Those activities included aerial and ground surveys, as well as basically to identify the types of crops and acreage. We've also partnered with the City of Kingman and USGS to model the aquifer, and we've also worked on a number of projects planning for recharge basins and both planning for and constructing. Part of that work, we have reached out to the agricultural community over the past 10 years to better understand what the demands would be for the various farms, and the types of crops and the amounts of acreage. Early on, we received some information from some of the farms, and that information was then passed on and used in the USGS study. In 2021, based on some of the findings of the USGS, we understood that there was some concern about that information. We reached out again to the farms, attended a number of NRCD meetings, as well as the Farm Bureau meetings held in town, requesting additional information in 2021 and have not received any additional information to correct the quote-unquote error in the information. With that, we've worked with USGS. Part of that project, USGS provided a portal for the county to be able to update the inputs based on current status. We've been able to use those models and look at what the current status would do. Also projected out that if the farms were to cultivate the remaining 80 to 90% of acres that are left right now uncultivated, what kind of impact that would have. I'd just point out that the ADWR's model is showing current conditions. The farms have only cultivated about 10% of the overall acreage that they own. So an INA would help freeze that and keep the current levels where they're at and not allow that additional 80 to 90 acres or 80 to 90,000 acres, I'm sorry, to be cultivated, which would dramatically increase the depletion in the aquifer. Lastly, I'll just touch on recharge. We have worked with the City of Kingman to install some recharge basins. The aquifer is somewhat different than other places in the country because of clay and caliche layers. Just a pond out there is not sufficient. Engineering is needed in order to get that water back down into the aquifer. So thank you very much for your time and appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Next up is Ryan Swap, then Kim Mitchell, then Anita Waite.
Hi, I'm Ryan Swap. I moved here to Kingman 10 years ago. I'm a local physician here, and I'd like to welcome you back. I really appreciate the director's initiation of the INA proceedings, and I think that this is a step in the right direction, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's really not adequate. In 100 years, we'll have water 1,200 feet below the ground level, assuming that there's no increase in pumps. And I mean, I think that we can all agree, and I understand the reason for that modeling. It's actually prescribed by state statute. You're not able to model anything outside of that, is what I understand. But in reality, if it's still legal, pumps are going to come in, and they're going to come in faster. They're going to come in exponentially faster, and our water is going to be exponentially less available to us. What we're essentially doing, if we have an analogy, we're essentially, if you think of this like a budget, an annual budget, it's like we're doing an annual budget through like March or April. There's a finite amount of water, and right now we're really not respecting that. Many of these farms are foreign owned. These are foreign entities. And they're virtually pumping our water, which is a resource that we have as citizens of this county and city. They're virtually pumping it out and taking that resource abroad. In 2018, Saudi Arabia made illegal alfalfa cultivation in Saudi Arabia. They did that because they understand the value of water, and they started growing it elsewhere, including here. We need to be cognizant of that as citizens. I think, honestly, this is a compromise that people can live with. For the farmers that have wells already, those wells won't be taken away. In fact, the value of their land will increase because competitors will be completely pushed out. There will be no one to come in and continue to drill. So I don't understand. I don't understand it when someone tells me that their land values will go down. It's the converse. Finally, I would ask Mr. Borelli and other state legislators to consider updating our water laws. They were put in 1980. They're pretty limited. In fact, they're pretty abysmal. And it's really time for change in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Kim Mitchell, then Anita Waite, then Roy Trempe.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Mitchell. I'm a water policy advisor with Western Resource Advocates, one of 5 members of the Water for Arizona Coalition. The coalition is a public interest entity with 60,000 Arizona members who support innovative ways to ensure a reliable water supply for our state. Our primary focus is state water policy. Excuse me. Our coalition believes in using a fact-based approach to improve water security in Arizona. We also believe that robust public engagement is crucial. So I'm here to thank Director Bushatsky also and the ADWR staff for holding this meeting to hear evidence on whether to designate the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as an irrigation non-expansion area. So we offer these comments. We support the designation of the Hualapai Basin as an INA. As a former hydrologist with ADWR, I know water supply studies matter. Accurate data that represents long-term trends, like we saw today, are a window into what's happening underground. In this basin, data shows that the expansion of high-capacity wells has caused significant dewatering of the aquifer over the last couple of decades. Both USGS and ADWR have well documented that groundwater levels in the Hualapai Valley Basin are in rapid decline. The aquifer is overdrawn. Currently, 4 times as much groundwater is being pumped out of the basin than is recharged or added back to the aquifer. In the last 20 years, water levels in some areas of the aquifer have declined by about 50 feet, and the USGS projects that those declines will roughly double by 2050. The local community and water managers in Mojave County have grave concerns about the severe stress on the groundwater system. Groundwater levels that continue to decline at this rate threaten the livelihoods of irrigators and other water users in the area. Without an INA designation, there is little incentive to invest in groundwater recharge and conservation efforts if other new agricultural users can just come in and pump those benefits away. Rural communities and leaders from the Hualapai Basin in particular have tirelessly advocated for groundwater protections for years now. They need tools to protect their water supply, preserve their rural heritage, and secure their economic future. Designating the Hualapai Basin as an INA is a step in the right direction. We look forward to also providing written comments to you by November 18th. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you.
Up next is Anita Waite, then Roy Trempe, then Rob Owen.
Hi, my name is Anita Waite. I am the chairman of the Big Sandy Natural Resource Conservation District. We also own Cane Springs Ranch in Wickiup, and I would like to thank you for coming here and allowing us to give you information that obviously you already don't have, because some of the information you're giving out is not proper and not correct. Now, this is too important for the director of the ADWR to make this decision on supposition and misleading facts and not the actual truth. Cane Springs Ranch has 43 registered wells, 11 are not in use. It leaves 32 wells in use, and because we rotate our cattle throughout our ranch, which is 70,000 acres, we only use 8 to 10 of those wells at a time. Okay, checking with the ranchers in the Hualapai Valley, they have 38 wells, 17 are not in use, leaving 21 wells in use, which also are is a very limited use because these are cattle wells. And I agree, cattle wells are a lot less than agriculture wells. But the other point that I'm making here, we are surveying the farmers for the same information. How many of those registered wells that you guys are counting are not even functioning? They do not have a pump in them for whatever reason. Now, we also need to look at the other thing. This being brings me to the brochure the county and city has sent out to the public. They make the statement that 69,000 acres are not cultivated, with the statement above leaving the reader the impression those acres can be farmed. They are not considering how many acres can actually be used. There is state land and BLM land, washes, terrain, and soils that cannot be farmed. The Big Sandy is surveying the farms to find out how many acres can actually be used. The actual amount of water being used is a supposition. That 25,000 acre feet of water is wrong, and we will be giving you the actual figures those farmers are using. And also, they don't take into consider the fact that the farmers are using technology that uses 66% less water, and that there is times the farmers do not actually irrigate during the winter time. And my time is up, so I will leave you with that, and thank you, and we will be sending you more information.
Thank you.
Up next is Roy Trempy, then Rob Owen, then Marion Ward.
Good afternoon. I unfortunately was not at the last meeting that was held here, but I was at the one in Valley Vista that you couldn't even understand the people speaking. I'll begin my speech by saying that I'm very surprised that you did not recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd like to thank veteran Sonny Borelli and veterans from America that live in the Kingman area, as I'm a Vietnam vet myself. I've lived here in Hackberry, Arizona on Route 66 for 23 years. I've seen it grow very rapidly in the last several years where I live. We have Mojave Electric, underground telephone, and our own well, and a beautiful home that we put all our money into. Moving here from Long Island, New York, the land of taxes. Only disadvantage is living on a dirt road, but we accept the good with the bad. Within the last few years, we have seen the wells drilled in the Red Lake area, growing alfalfa for foreign purchasing, using our water, also seeing Golden Valley, same thing, and especially coming down Route 66 towards town from Hackberry, there's thousands of trees that were planted with so many wells. And I'd like to find out how many wells these people put in to grow trees and how deep they went. Because I don't know anything about the water aquifers, but if an aquifer runs dry, do the other aquifers fill up that space? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next is Rob Owen, then Marion Ward, then Gary Brock.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Rob Owen. I'm Public Works Director for the City of Kingman and Chairman of the Kingman Water Sustainability Task Force. Our task force is a joint working group of Mojave County and city staff and public members who share resources and knowledge on water resource planning and project development. Kingman Municipal Water serves about 50,000 people. Our customers are some of the most water efficient in the state of Arizona. Our gallons per capita per day is 89 gallons. That compares favorably to anybody anywhere in this state. As a municipal water provider, our concern is that well soundings in the area of our well field show significant declines. The USGS model shows that some of our wells will be the first affected by drawdown attributed to agricultural expansion in the basin. It also shows that the Kingman Subbasin could become cut off from the rest of the Hualapai Basin in the future. Our customers have already expended significant resources on water resiliency projects, including a reclaimed water recharge well for around $2 million, stormwater dry wells and infiltration basins of around $1 million. Our cost to develop a new well in today's dollars is between $2 and $3 million each. We have 11 wells in the basin. The replacement or relocation of our existing wells due to declining groundwater levels would be an astronomical cost on our customers. Our water ratepayers would be the only ones to pay to address a predicament that they have no culpability in bringing about. We face a serious situation. The most logical next step is to stop making it worse. We urge the director to establish an irrigation non-expansion area in the Hualapai Basin and help us stop making it worse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Marion Ward, then Gary Brock, then James Jones.
My name is Marion Ward. I was recently elected to City Council, and based on the evidence I've seen, I'm in favor of the INA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops. Up next is Gary Brock, then James Jones, then Kathy Tackett Hicks. Gary Brock, B-R-A-C-H. All right. Black, it might be Black, Gary Black. Sorry about that.
Hi there, Gary Black. I'm a landowner out on Red Lake. I've owned that property for about 50 years. We got 160 acres out there. I've owned a lot of property here, my family, for hundreds of years, or 100 years anyway, more than that. I think the water situation here is one where it is history will show you with the native tribes that have, not made it through the droughts. We're in a drought. I think it's going to improve. And I think you need to really study these. The water will come back. You need to, people talk about all this, the foreign entities that are farming and taking the products away from here. What about, the landowners that live here that would grow something that could stay here, So anyway, I'm opposed to doing this right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is James Jones, then Kathy Tackett Hicks, then Marceline Cranon.
My name is James of the family of Jones. I represent myself, and I'm a member of the America First Committee. Let me remind you that state statutes, codes, regulations are not law, but color of law. Only Congress can pass law. Any state statute, code, or regulation must be in line with the United States Constitution. United States of America versus Jerry Arbic Pool. The federal Constitution must be interpreted in light of the common law, the principles and histories of which were familiarly known to the framers of the Constitution. The language of the Constitution could not be understood without references to the common law. United States Supreme Court ruling, U.S. versus Wong Kim. If you say there is no common law, you are saying there is no Constitution. Common law is still the law of the land. The Constitution was ordained and established by the people for the United States of America, aka government. Therefore, government was created by an act of the people. The creation cannot overrule the creator. If any statement within a law which is passed and unconstitutional, the whole law is unconstitutional. Mayberry versus Madison. All cases which have cited Mayberry versus Madison case to the Supreme Court has never been overturned. See Shepard's citation of Mayberry versus Madison. All of you have taken an oath of office to uphold the U.S. and the Arizona Constitutions. Perjury of oath is a Class 4 felony, ARS 38231. Under common law, we the people have a God-given right to our land and the water underneath that land without regulations. When people buy land, they usually get water and mineral rights with the land. The recording of the deed on the property will reveal this. You're trying to regulate a right to property as water comes with the property. Creating an irrigation non-expansion area is a ploy to gain control of the people and their land through color of law. This is government overreach and violation of your oath of office. The Communist Manifesto plank number 1 says abolishment of private property and the application of all rents of land to public purposes. Do that with regulating the water, the zoning. You have brought to us a significant amount of government overreach. You have illegally filed basically a cease and desist violating the right of we the people of Mojave County under color of law. Is that my comment?
Thank you.
Up next is Kathy Tackett Hicks, then Marceline Cranon, then Paula Felix.
Good day to you. My name is Kathy Tackett Hicks. I'm a property owner in Kingman and within the Hualapai Basin. I raised my family here. I have businesses here. I'm very grateful for everything Mojave County has given me. I am very concerned, though, on several items on this. I do not support the INA. It is not warranted. There's been a plethora of false information distributed. I hear it again today in discussions, and it's very disturbing. Now, I have the unique repertoire of experience to have been here and been involved in 30 years of water issues. When I hear the city indicate that they have to drill extra wells now that are going to cost their ratepayers extra money, that concerns me because I was involved with the Mojave County Water Authority. I was part of the team that got that legislation passed almost 30 years ago, and the city at that time committed to drilling deeper wells. They also committed to changing their golf course groundwater use to effluent. And that has still never occurred. And that concerns me just as a Kingman resident who pays water taxes. I'm also concerned with some of the data that was presented here earlier by you concerning the water reports and the analysis of adequate water study. I have been involved in several of those because I'm an old lady, been doing this for a long time. The Marty and Ranch analysis of adequate water, I was involved in that, as well as 3 other ones. Those water reports you referenced, which I thought gave a bad picture because you indicated the water reports, out of the 49 issued, 46 of those were inadequate, which is a true fact. But the reason that those were submitted, and I myself, if you look at the application, submitted many of them, because right now Mojave County allows for any subdivision process which has at least 5 acres in size, you do not require an assured adequate water supply. I filed those applications as well as everybody else requesting an inadequate supply. The reason that was done is for timeliness. And secondly, the analysis of adequate water supply costs millions of dollars to produce. And your everyday landowner who wants to create anywhere from 6 to 50 lots does not have $1 million to invest. So that's what we've done in the private sector. I have been to several meetings. I've followed the issue closely. I've testified. I've spoken before the Board of Supervisors. I've always been concerned about the inaccurate data, and I am to this day. I implore you to try to get to that. I do not believe per statute we are even close to initiating an INA at this part. I'm committed to getting it right and working with anyone to do that. And I will lastly say that Regina Cobb's, she had a water committee, which I did attend those, and I testified concerning various water issues she had asked me to do, and I did. She did make a request that the farms supply data, which the farms that I work with did in fact supply data to that. There is an absolute disconnect between some of the private agricultural entities and industry in general. Because
I think we might be over. I don't know if it's working. But yeah, thank you.
It's like a green light, but thank you.
Yep.
Up next is Marceline Cranon, then Paula Felix, then Vicky Zamwat.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to support what's going on with the INA for the water in the Hualapai Valley Basin. I also come every day back and forth from that area, from the Valley Vista. And, you know, I was looking at one of your slides where they're showing how the erosion from the fissures and the land erosion. And I am a long resident all my life living here in Kingman, Arizona. And I have never seen the wind dust that is going on right now and the haboobs that are going on in this area where I have been stopped 4 times coming from that area because of wind and because of the dust that has been eroding the land out there. Yes, we can say all we can about water. We have been ignoring the Valley Vista Red Lake area. And I think it's time that we start really putting restrictions, an INA in the Mojave Valley Basin in protection of not only just the water. Yes, we have water out there. Many people want it now. They want to use it for their agriculture. But we also want to see that the ecosystem is also protected, that the land that's happening out there and the erosion is just going berserk. Not only that, but I am a Hualapai native, and that land out there is sacred. And in the early days, before the intrusion of land, the white man coming here, the Native Americans knew that land and the water that came from all the different areas. The 14 bands of the Hualapais are named after the springs that are from the Surbat Mountain, the Peacock Mountain area, the Music Mountain area. And when the white man came here and going through that basin area, the Native Americans saw them carrying their water, and they saw the camels coming through their land. And they gave the white man a name, and that name was Hagui. And what that means is Ha means water. And what it means is that the white man came carrying his water because he didn't know where the water came from. But the Native American, the Hualapai, knew where those springs were. And so they gave him that name. But the thing that I'm trying to use in this analogy is that we have to be protecting what we have as our own. And Kingman today needs to have an INA for that area. Thank you. Come here.
Thank you.
Up next is Paula Felix, then Vicky Zumwat, then Chelsea McGuire.
Hello, I'm Paula Felix, and I'm rather new to the area, and my knowledge of this water INA thing is also very new. But just even from the data today and the idea of
you might need to speak a little closer to the microphone there.
Us being in a desert where we have limited water available, it seems that an INA shouldn't be something for anyone to argue about. If they're not going to plan on overusing it, what do they care that it's being monitored? And if they are planning on expanding, what about the community, the people that live here? We don't need these people taking the water resources that are limited and growing crops to sell to another country. We don't need even out of this area. We need to be able to sustain this community area for just even people. And I don't know how many more developers are coming in with housing and using it, but it looked like from the data I've seen, there's already 3 times the rate of agriculture water being pulled at the same time that the community's using the water. So they're already getting their fair share. I don't know what the concern with an INA is unless you plan on wanting to use anything you want and untethered, and it just doesn't seem very, very community forward thinking. If we don't do anything, we'll be one of those areas where they say later on, someone should have had some foresight before it was too late, instead of just going on about their business without any concern. I think this INA seems to be a very small step towards any kind of protection. And it's just keeping track, it seems like. And that's okay. If that's what the law gives, then that's what it gives. I agree with the gentleman earlier that laws should be being created that'll give more protection so that the hands aren't tied of those in charge at that, in the director's area, that will protect the community. Water resources are valuable. What are we going to do? Ship it in? No, we need to protect what we have, and I hope that you do create your INA here and make it so that there's a chance for this to be a safe water supply in 100 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Vicky Zumwalt, then Chelsea McGuire, then Lucas S.
Hi, I'm Vicky Zumwalt. That's Zumwalt, Zumwalt. I want to thank you all for coming today. I was not able to be here during the last meeting, and I appreciate the very comprehensive report that this nice lady put on for us, the hydrology report. I don't think anyone here can look at those pieces of data and not see that we're in trouble, that we really need the INA, and I'm in favor of it. I want to say I concur with Jean Bishop. I am in District 4. I appreciate her comments for the residents that she supervises. And I also want to give you some information. We have, I'm speaking for a group of 14 people. We are on one well. Within the last 6 years, our well was operating at 600 gallons per hour. And 6 months ago, it went down to 120 gallons per hour. It's affected the 14 families that are on this well. I'm sure there are other wells. According to the drilling company that we used to look at this well, they said they are seeing a well go dry every week. One well every week. And people are having to drill deeper and deeper and deeper, which costs a significant amount of money. So I would encourage you to approve the INA, and even to go further. We need to look at further regulations regulating the water. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next is Chelsea McGuire, then Lucas S., then Charmaine Keith.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea McGuire here on behalf of the Arizona Farm Bureau. We represent about 2,300 farm and ranch families across the state, including many here in Mojave County, and appreciate the opportunity to speak against the INA designation here today. I believe that we've already heard and will continue to hear from farmers that represent a significant number of the acres in question here. And as we hear from them and they talk about the data that they're submitting through their comments and additional data that they will be presenting to the department, we urge the department to take full consideration of those data points in revising the information in the model that they're using to make this consideration. As the presentation was going forward, we talked about the importance of context, and just as important of context in some of this data is having the right data to begin with. So we appreciate the opportunity to present more data. The Farm Bureau will also follow up with its written comments, but in doing so, we believe that there's not evidence to meet the objective criteria that is required to designate the INA. So thank you for the opportunity to comment, and we will follow up with additional comments in our written email as well.
Thank you.
Up next is Lucas S., and my list got a little bit wonky, so I apologize. After that is David Staley, and then Charmaine Keith. Lucas S. It might be an A instead of an S. Lucas. Okay. Last chance for Lucas. All right, we'll go to David Staley.
Hi, my name is David Staley. I'm a longtime resident of Kingman, Arizona. My family moved here in 1973, and I remember growing up here, we had to do most of our shopping in Las Vegas. And we would drive through the dam to get to Las Vegas, of course, back then. And I remember when I was 12 seeing the overflow at Lake Mead. And it's kind of hard to look at the largest reservoir in the United States in its condition today. I realize that we're talking about groundwater versus surface water, but it's hard to ignore these signs in clear sight. The second largest reservoir in the United States is Lake Powell. The levels of Lake Powell are also dangerously low. Again, these are surface water, but whether it's Lake Powell, Lake Mead, Upper Lake Mary and Flagstaff, Lower Lake Mary and Flagstaff, Whitehorse Lake and Williams, the Great Salt Lake, these are all nature's alarm bells sounding, and it's really hard to ignore. I think for me, if this INA was not put in place, there's clearly a lot of agriculture watching what's taking place today. And if an INA isn't in place, I imagine there's a lot of farmers that are looking at relocating here from possibly areas that have restrictions, communities that are running out of water, areas that are running out of water. Those people are going to be looking to relocate, and it seems like it would send a pretty clear signal if we don't put restrictions in. A lot of people would be coming this way. So anyways, I'm in favor of the INA, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Charmaine Keith, then Wayne Wissinger, then Jamie Staley.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Keith. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I didn't expect to, but I just want to say I love water. I'm always dehydrated, and so that's a huge commodity. I just think that everybody has to be very careful about pushing laws on people, creating restrictions. I do love water. I love Kingman. I love Mojave County, but we do need local farmers. If people are dependent on Amazon and Walmart to be shipping in food, they're going to starve eventually. So that's something to be very, very careful of. Everybody is forgetting how important they are to us here. We are a rural area, and we can't depend on shipment. The diesel fuel's running out. The cost to bring things in is running out. I'm actually trying to get a hold of a farmer to deliver meat to my house. I agree. I agreed, though, of creating laws against foreign countries, regulating foreign countries coming here because, like the previous speaker said, a lot of them, that is foreign companies shipping everything out, taking up the water. So I agree with that. I'm not a speaker, so in fact, I believe there is. I own a home out there in the Hualapai Basin, and I've been remodeling it for 3 years. However, the Constitution is above all. Upholding the Constitution in America for Americans is above it. That's it. So I think when the gentleman said you have to uphold the Constitution, the case should be closed, in my opinion. And yes, we do need to have the farmers here. It sounds like they're very conscientious of how their water is being used. And I mean, they've been here for a very long time. And I think there is a deep trust there. But I just want to say that upholding the Constitution of America for Americans and creating laws against foreign companies is where we should be looking to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Wayne Wissinger, then Jamie Staley, then Travis Lingenfelter.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for showing up and giving us this opportunity to speak. My name is Wayne Wissinger. I'm a Mojave County resident since 1968. I moved to Mojave County to originally Lake Havasu City. Back in 1968, Phoenix was only around 70,000 people, and we've seen that growth over the years. And Arizona has grown during that time, and Kingman is growing. We're all growing, and we're all in a hunt for resources. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is I've noticed the dam going down, but I also realize what the dam does. It holds back power or water to create power. And we've all been using more and more power, and thus more and more water is being released to produce that power. One of the things that I'm concerned with and request you guys to slow down on going through this process so that we can really see at the actual data, the real data, not just the hypothetical data, but let's get the real accurate data that we need. Because one of the things I'm concerned with is under an INA, as I'm reading the statute, there's exemptions. We've always been thought that, hey, our water's our water. It can't go anywhere else. You can't draw water from one aquifer and put it into another. And we've always had that in the back of our mind. But what I'm reading in the statute is, except as provided in subsection B of this section, and this is 45440, in a subsequent irrigation and non-expansion area from which groundwater may be withdrawn and transported into an active management area pursuant to Article 8.1 of this chapter. In these articles we're reading, there's a possibility that if we did get an INA, and I don't know this, I'd like the time to research this out, but if we did get an INA in Mojave County, would it be, we're worried about the farmers, but would it then be possible to another aquifer or another area for them to come in and take our water from us under the INA? Or is the INA still restrict our groundwater only for us, not to be taken anywhere else? Because there's also a subsection in there under B that says we can actually transfer the water out of our INA for the use of producing power in another area that has an AMA. And so what I'm looking at as I read through that, and I haven't had the time to really thoroughly go through the entire state statute, but is it possible under these circumstances that we, if we are approved for an INA, can water be pulled out of our area and transmitted to another area for the production of power? And I just like to encourage you guys to slow down and to research all of this so that we can be well informed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Jamie Staley, then Travis Lingenfelter, then James E. Deschennes.
Hello. I want to start out by thanking you for being here on a Saturday on Veterans Day, and of course want to give a shout out to all of our veterans that are here today and all of those that are in our community. Thank you for your service. My name is Jamie Staley, and I am a lifelong resident of Kingman, Arizona. I am also a small business owner, and I serve on the Kingman City Council. And because I represent the citizens of this community, I am here today in support of the INA. We believe that we have a right to this drinking water. We were here long before the farms, and we want to be able to turn our faucets and have water come out. And I can tell you that when we get to the point that the water level is so low that we have to drill our wells deeper, that will be a hardship on the citizens of Kingman, because it will be very expensive. You know, we've heard a lot of emotional pleas here today. And I think that we all appreciate the opportunity to voice our concerns. So thank you for that. But in the end, I believe that your decision will be based on the facts that you had presented at the beginning of this meeting. We have yet to hear from any hydrologists with evidence that would call into question the facts that you had presented earlier today. And as scientists and professionals in your field, I just have to believe that you are going to support the INA based on your own data. And because of that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for moving this forward. Some people are talking about this moving quickly, but I think if you ask anyone at the city or the county, we have been working on this for at least the last 6 years. We've had a lot of meetings. We've worked with different experts, the USGS, other hydrologists and geologists. Everybody has come to the same conclusion. And in those 6 years, we've pushed really hard, and we are here today. We are thankful for that. But this certainly, if in our eyes, has been a slow process. So we're glad to see this moving forward, and we're glad that you're considering protecting Kingman's drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Travis Lingenfelter, then James E. Deschennes, then Miles Hunter.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you guys making the trip up. I am Travis Lingenfelter. I'm the current Mojave County Supervisor for District 1. District 1 represents about half of Kingman, the Val Vista area, the Hualapai tribe, and about 65% of Mojave County's total land area, all the way up to the Utah border. I'm from a family of 4 generations here in the Kingman area. My grandfather came here, Dr. John Lingenfelter in the 60s, was the 4th doctor in Mojave County. I'm a business owner, and also my family owns and operates a 12-acre grape vineyard out by the Kingman Airport Industrial Park, and we supply Stetson Winery in the Val Vista area and a few other places too. I'd say we have an opportunity here to do the right thing, to make a difference, to be a good stewards of the water, which is finite and deposited many, many, many thousands of years ago that we all depend on for our lives and livelihoods. The Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin is careening toward the same problem that has already affected many areas of this state, such as within the Cochise County basins there. Some of those had some ballot questions on their ballot this year. California and international agricultural companies have purchased just under, by county records, just under 78,000 acres within this valley over the past 10 years. There are currently approximately 8,400 acres being farmed currently. Without an INA, more than 69,000 additional acres in this valley owned by the farming entities could be turned into additional irrigated acres. And although we've heard that it's not their intent to farm all those acres, the county and the city, looking out for everybody, all of our most vulnerable populations, we cannot rest on the assumption that they just purchased those acres to pay property taxes on them. Also, we have heard of proposed recharge basins that some of them have done, and I applaud those efforts. However, the county recently partnered with a geologist by the name of Louis Vega, who's been here for a very, very long time with the mines, and did three videos, one on the geography of this specific basin, also how recharge works, also how the wells in one area doesn't tell you exactly what's going on with the whole basin. We have 10,000 acre feet going in, 44,000 acre feet going out. Mojave County is the largest governing organization or agency in this area. We would ask you to please form the INA now. This is not a flash in the pan request. We have been after this with the city of Kingman since 2015, 2016. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Up next is James E. Deschennes, then, thank you, then Miles Hunter, then Robert Jones.
Been butchered a lot of times. I'm Jim Deschennes. I can say that water use rules for Arizona were made in the past when Arizona was mostly unpopulated or lightly populated. We are now heavily populated and need some sort of restriction on the water use. A friend of mine tried to buy alfalfa out there out of one of those farms. He couldn't, because it was all contracted Saudi Arabia, and the next year is contracted to China. We have archaic rules. I don't think we should conjure the Constitution and say that we own everything under us. Or maybe we're going to have to be fighting with the Chinese for their water. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next is Miles Hunter, then Robert Jones, then Michael Neal.
Hi, my name is Miles Hunter. I would like to thank you guys for making the long trip again, and on a Saturday nonetheless. Thanks. I'm only a 17-year resident of Kingman, but like everyone here, I have invested money and other things to make a life here. My background is about 35 years work offshore, mostly in the oil industry, exploration, oil field construction and development, but also in transoceanic cable laying, pipeline route surveys, harbor expansion, Mississippi River dredging. I am not a hydrologist or a geologist. I am a hydrographer, subsea surveyor, navigator, depending on the job. I understand the data, Emily. The data that you presented means a lot to me. I'm not ready to trash USGS data. I have depended on their data for 35 years to get my job done. I'm not ready to call the Water Resources Department liars for their data observations and the wells that they have looked at. Yes, water level's declining. I don't care how efficiently anybody uses water, it's declining. I'm worried about it because we have a drought some people say will never end. We need to be careful. We need to err on the side of caution. I do support the INA vigorously. I really don't have much meaningful to say after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Robert Jones, then Michael Neal, then Michael O'Connell.
I'm Robert Jones. The hydrology report was very good. I'm a water consumer. I'm just a resident here in Kingman. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in economics, which studied the firm. I didn't really concern myself with macroeconomics. I also have an MBA. And I want to talk about a few principles of economics and business. First of all, resources are finite. Air, land, water, they are all finite. We don't like to think that they are, but they are. Second principle, anything that is overused is underpriced. We have 10,000 acre feet of water coming in, 44,000 acre feet of water going out. That is 34,000 acre feet short. That is a resource being overused and underpriced. Third thing is the most profitable businesses, and when I say profitable, I mean in economics terms, not in accounting terms. I was also an accountant. In economics terms, profitable businesses, and those are not good, those are bad businesses, are those that can push some of their costs onto others. And large-scale commercial farming in this area is pushing that cost of water and shortage off onto residents, and they will abandon those communities at some point. I'm in favor of creating an INA for the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Michael Neal, then Michael O'Connell, then Karen Thomas.
Hello, my name is Michael Neal. I'm representing Truxton Canyon Water Company and Surbat Water Company. They're both public utilities in the Hualapai aquifer. I'm a fifth generation rancher. My grandfather actually owned the majority of Hualapai Valley many, many years ago. My wells have all come up. The static water levels have come up. None of them have gone down. The water that I provide to my customers is adequate, and I'm very concerned about having water for my customers. I don't believe that an INA is warranted at this time. I feel that it should be monitored, and that the state and the farmers should work together, have some conversations about how much water they use. After the last meeting in September, I was invited by some of the farmers to look at their technology, and they're using a significant amount less water than the model is showing that they're using. And a lot of the area that they own cannot be farmed, and they will not farm it. I just believe that we're kind of jumping the gun here, that we need to step back and not form an INA at this time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is Michael O'Connell, then Karen Thomas, then Ryan Sonner. Michael O'Connell. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Karen Thomas. After Karen Thomas will be Ryan Sonner, then Ryan McGuire.
My name is Karen Thomas, and I've lived in Kingman for over 20 years. I have noticed around me the changes in the weather, lots more wind. It was mentioned before about all the dust up in Valley Vista. I see that in town. I am very much in favor of an INA. I've worked for the county for 11 years and been retired for 5, so most of my time in Kingman has been working for the Public Works Department of the county. I've been involved, my job was a project administrator, so I've been involved in water discussions for a long time. I know that people have asked for surveys and tests and other information, been difficult to get. You mentioned in your report how the information is incomplete. The first 2 gentlemen who came up here talked about how they voluntarily submitted water usage. Why is that voluntary? Why isn't it required of everyone? When these rules were made, it was a long time ago, and there weren't nearly as many people here, and there wasn't nearly as much water being used. They didn't need those regulations. But as someone else pointed out, it's time to review and update the laws regarding this issue. I believe that we need more information going forward, but I also believe the information that you gave us is pretty much on trend. In fact, it might be worse. I don't know if it is or not, but I am very much in favor of this INA because we need to take a stand on protecting things before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Ryan Sonner, then Ryan McGuire, then Karen Cabrera.
Hello, my name is Ryan Sonner. I work with Peacock Nut Company, one of the farms that were mentioned on your map. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm against the INA. I do not feel that it's sustainable or correct to just single out agriculture. If we are in need of an INA, I feel like it should be across the board with everything. You guys don't mention expansion of residential, industrial, or other industries that use water. You're only focusing on agriculture. I don't feel that's right. I want to know what the county's plans are to recharge water. How come we're not coming up with actual solutions to make it to where the farmers can farm, the industry can grow, residents can grow? It's a very important thing to conserve water, but also to come up with solutions to gather the water that we can from the rains or whatever it is we can, or recover what we're using back into the aquifer. I also never see you guys mention farming, the recovery of water from farming trees. You do know that there's a 7-foot rip all the way down every row through the crust for the trees. We're watering those trees. Where does the water go? It doesn't just all evaporate. It goes back into the ground. There is a recovery just in that alone from the farms. We're not even mentioning that. So we really need to get all the numbers together, make sure we're making a really educated decision and have the correct numbers. I believe that this model was done without the farms' numbers, without how much water we're using, what we're recovering. None of that is in that study that I'm seeing. And I feel like this INA should not move forward until we have all the information and we know we're doing the right thing for everybody as a community. I also feel that the government, the county supervisors, and everybody should work together with the farmers. We've been left out. That's just my take on it. Thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Up next is Ryan McGuire, then Karen Cabrera, then Jeff Duarte.
And Mr. McGuire, before you start, after you provide your comments, we may take a quick 5-minute break. We've been going at about 90 minutes now, so.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys my name is Ryan McGuire. I'm the manager of Peacock Nut Company. They're out there by the airport. And I'd like to thank you guys for coming again. I spoke a lot last meeting at our water saving technology using Phytech. As a few other speakers prior to me, I mean, I'm not going to speak a lot, but a few other speakers prior to me spoke about us saving up to 66% water this year. And that's based on the California standard, the Gold Hammer standard in pistachios. And that is an old standard that I believe the USGS referenced in their model. I believe that was back in 1987, 1986. That's outdated information. I think that Kingman should be proud to have the farmers here. We are basically writing the book in Arizona for pistachios. This area has great climate and great weather, a lot of water, and we would be glad to have you guys come out and take a look at how we use our water and look at our wells and our monitoring. In the USGS report, it stated that, we currently farm 3,391 acres of pistachios. In the model, the USGS stated that we used 8,721 acre feet of water in 2021. The actual number is 1,591 acre feet. So that's 8,721 in the model that was up here on the board. Actual water usage was 1,591 acre feet. That's 4 to 5 times more water than was actually used that the USGS provided you, which was provided from the county, the USGS, and then provided over to ADWR, and you guys put it in your model. The model also stated in USGS that it's 2.57 acre feet per acre that was used across the entire 3,391 acres. The actual number is less than half a foot. So less than half a foot of water was used. Not acre feet, half a foot of water. You guys got that? Okay. All right. And so we presented this letter here to ADWR in a written statement. And I would ask that you guys please follow the law and take a look at it. And I appreciate it. And I am opposed to the INA. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So before we start, we are at about about 3:47 right now. Let's pick back up at let's just pick back up at the top of the hour at 4 p.m. We'll take a quick break. Thank you. All right, we're going to be starting back up here in a minute. So if you could find your way back to your seat, we will pick up with public comment.
Yeah. All right, up next is Karen Cabrera. Karen Cabrera? Okay. After Karen will be Jeff Duarte, then Rebecca Perk.
Hi, I'm Karen Cabrera. Thanks to all of our veterans for your service. Couple things bother me about the INA, although I'm very supportive of it. One is only one person going to make the final decision on this?
So per statute, it is a decision of the director, and we'll be getting into the precise procedures at the end of this meeting.
I see. Okay. Being a retired nurse, I always think about the water level as I'm watching it go down in Lake Mead, and how much of our body is made up of water. So when we talk about depriving people of a resource like water, I think about, I wonder how long everyone in this room would last without enough water. Having been a nurse, I can give you some guesses on that. I would strongly like to see us put some limitations in place with the INA, because I think we need to protect our water. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Jeff Duarte, then Rebecca Perk, then Adam Register.
All right, well, thank you to all of our veterans. It's been said, but can't be said enough. Thank you to all of you, especially those that are present with us today. And thank you guys for having us. Jeff Duarte, CEO of Peacock Nut Company. Forgive me if some of this is redundant to some of the previous comments. Just want to take a look at the statute and what the requirements are for the INA for the director's decision. There's a couple of things. There's two, but I want to talk about the first one. And it reads, there is insufficient groundwater to provide a reasonably safe supply for irrigation of the cultivated lands in the area at the current rates of withdrawal. So the current rates of withdrawal are topical here, and up to now we have been using assumptions that have been wildly overstated, and we've got the information together. The ADWR received a letter a couple of days ago sent by Fred Breedlove of Snell and Wilmer on behalf of Peacock Nut Company. The letter provides the accurate and provable water usage information from our farm and others, and what it shows is that we and the few other farms we talked to are using about 20% of the amount represented in the model. So about a fifth of the water that's been represented in the assumptions in the model. We've got this recorded and sent under signed affidavits. It's accurate and it's provable. Once these correct numbers are plugged into the model, we'll see that the proposed action on this INA is premature. That doesn't mean that INA never needs to happen, but it does need to happen right now. And the other part of this is we do need to keep this conversation going with the farming community, with the county, with your board, and discuss, the carrying capacity of this valley for residential and for farming and industry. There is one. We need to be together and discussing it. I'll re-extend the invitation that our manager has put forth in inviting you all out to our farm. What we want to show you, if you can make it out there, is the software that we use to record our information and how we decide how much water to give the trees, how we read the trees, how we monitor our wells, how we check depth to water, all of those things that we've been talking about here. We'd like to share that with you. I'd like to invite you out and anyone from the county as well. There's been a few Tim Walsh, Rob Owen, anybody that works in the county that is part of this conversation, we'd like to sit down with you. We definitely do not want an adversarial relationship with anybody here. We want to be part of this community. We all have the same goals. Everybody in this room has the same goal, and there's water sustainability for the Hualapai Valley. Again, thank you for having us, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Up next is Rebecca Perk, then Adam Register, then Terry Allenbaugh.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Peck, P-E-C-K, and I'm a longtime 38-year resident of Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin, and I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And I also wanted to thank the ADWR. I think, I know it's a lot of work at what you are doing, and I want to thank the city and the county for the courage to tackle this issue and work with ADWR so we can come up with some solutions. I think a 4-to-1 outflow to inflow of water in the basin should give us pause. And frankly, I think it should scare the daylights out of all of us. I think the INA designation is a positive step forward in beginning to deal with the declining water levels in the basin. I think the data presented by ADWR supports an IAN designation, and I think the data speaks for itself. As a matter of fact, I think the data shouts at us to do something, to shout at us to take action. I am in favor of the INA for the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Adam Register, then Terry Allenbaugh, and then William Rush.
I'm Adam Register. I work for Oasis Organics here in Kingman. I was born here in Kingman. My kids were born in Kingman. My first grandkid was just born here in Kingman. And if I thought we had a water problem, I damn sure wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I can tell you, we go out, we make sure that we don't have any leaks. We check our moisture constantly. Our soil is different here than the soil in California, where they get this water usage, for the pistachio trees. We don't use nearly the amount of water that you guys are saying. And I can tell you, we're good stewards of the land. We try to take care of everything. We make sure that everything's clean. We take care of the wildlife around us. We're building retention ponds. We're doing everything we can to get water back down into that aquifer and not deplete it, and to use it sparingly. And I just think that you guys are going ahead way too far, way too fast. You're not getting the data from us at all. We need a round table where we all sit down and get together and get actual numbers together, rather than just all of these educated guesses of what's going on in this valley. So I'm really against the INA. And I can tell you, I keep hearing corporate farms and California farms. Who cares? Who cares what we are? We're good people. We come here to better a community. We're not out here causing any trouble, and we'll be the first to help our neighbors. And I'd like to point out too that we're talking about saving water, and Mr. Owen over here talked about the city and its practices. And I can tell you firsthand, in my neighborhood, there's been leaks that I've reported that they haven't been out to in 2 weeks. So I would like to invite them to use the same practices that we do and go out there and check and fix wherever the water's leaking. Help the community like we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terry Allenbaugh, and after that will be William Rush, then Andrew Shea.
Hi, I'm Terry. I just wanted to, first off, I wanted to voice my gratitude to the farmers of this community that they do conserve water, and I want to thank you, the county, and the city for getting together and working with these people as requested. But I am for the INA. In my past experiences in other states, this is something that we need to prevent other people coming in. In the few years that I've lived in Kingman, it has doubled in growth of residents. I am a homeowner here and an elderly on Social Security, and would really appreciate the regulation to prevent large corporate farmers from coming into the basin. The man that spoke of the wind turmoil is also a big asset that we should talk about, because it's not an asset, and the farms do cause that somewhat. I am from another desert area, but I did see that area do the same thing as here. I am from Southern California, and I have watched Lake Mojave myself, and also at Lake Powell and Lake Mead and all of that really decrease over many years. And I really think that the INA is necessary at this point. And I would appreciate further everybody growing together with all of your data together and forming a plan for water conservation here, that we can conserve water in our basin so that it goes back into the ground. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is William Rush, then Andrew Shea, then Mike Bradley.
Well, thank you guys for inviting us up to hear what we have to say about all these problems that you guys are working on. My name is William Rush, W-I-L-L-I-A-M, Rush, R-U-S-H. I really don't consider myself a landowner, even though I do pay the taxes on many acres. And anyways, between me and my son, and we really look at this whole situation here as something we don't want to see take place, because we've been actually robbed so many times, 7 times by different people that have robbed our property, and it's really held us up from being able to put our property into what we wanted to do with water. And though we do have a well, and so we're not in favor of going ahead with this at this time. We really see that it's not necessary, none of that, but we have faith that, you know, I think the real thing to do is to get a hold of the person that filled the Glen Canyon Dam in '87. Do you remember that situation? They had to build a 4-foot high plywood wall to keep the water from flowing over the top of it. And I know that person. That person can shut up the rain, or he can turn it on. And I think that you would all be happy to look to him. And he holds his hand out to us to let us know that he wants to do this for us, but he also wants to get our attention. And we can play with the numbers. I mean, as many had mentioned, the numbers are, you never know what the numbers really mean. It's a big game. Number games are something actually divinely reported in the Bible to never rely on numbers, because it's a game. And those that play with numbers in Las Vegas, for instance, they don't have your interest, you know, at hand, and nobody else that goes in there, really, they have their own interest at hand. And so we got to be careful to not let those kind of dangers creep in on us, because they certainly, I know they come from above you and above who's above them and above there quite a ways. So it's not something I think that we want not to be holding down the little man while we're giving the big man a lot. And there's kind of a tendency to do that because money speaks. And I don't think we want to be ever telling our kids that, yeah, we put that stranglehold on that little guy, you know, but we really want to go find water. There's a saying in Wyoming, I come from Wyoming, that says whiskey's for drinking, water is for fighting. But myself, I say, it's better to, you know, when you run out of whiskey, go look for more. And the same with water. There's plenty of places to look for water. And really, the right way is to look for the one that actually filled that Glen Canyon Dam.
Thank you.
Up next is Andrew Shea, then Mike Bradley, then Fort Bradley Farms.
Hello, my name is Andrew Shea. I recently purchased a home in the Hualapai, Kingman area. As a child, I have since overcame a speech disability, so I will speak slowly. So if the panel can, please bear with me. Across the state of Arizona, our farmers are under assault. And I want to say that the American farmer is already under attack from inflation, the supply chain, and the failed economic policies from the Biden administration. The Colorado River, which wraps around Mojave, is in serious trouble. Emily, well, you were talking about acre feet inflow and outflow numbers. 10,000 acre feet and 44,000 acre feet. That's a drop in the bucket to the state currently allocated 2.8 million acre feet from the Colorado River. Now what's coming on the Colorado, along with a 21% river water cuts coming in 2023, and the Department of the Interior wants the Basin states to cut another 2.4 million acre feet of water. We will lose farmers, ranchers, jobs. People will lose their livelihood. There will be loss of hydroelectricity at the Hoover Dam and the Glen Canyon Dam. There will be a massive vacuum for millions that are coming. But what concerns me is the panel put together a chart that looks great for 100 years when Lake Mead and Lake Powell are marching towards a dead pool. In just my opinion, I feel the purpose of these hearings is to divide and conquer. I approve the INA. The state right now is currently under a dark cloud with these waiting election results. My fear is that what is going on is a front for a hidden agenda. And in closing, I don't want to see foreign investors, foreign governments, or the federal government coming in to take the water.
Thank you.
Up next is Mike Bradley, then Fort Bradley Farms, then Dr. Mark Berry.
Hi, my name is Mike Bradley. I'm a landowner in the Hualapai Valley. I also own a well. I oppose this INA, and honestly, for the life of me, I don't know why you guys aren't really working with these farms to get your numbers right. It seems like it's gone pretty quick. I know some people have said it's been 6 years, but it's also been denied that whole time as well. I strongly oppose it, and I know you guys think all these foreign companies are coming in to take it, and companies from California, but what about all these smaller people? And you guys are basically killing the American dream here in Mojave County, and I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Fort Bradley Farms, then Dr. Mark Berry, then Dale Williams.
Hi, my name is Mike P. Bradley. We own Fort Bradley Farms out mile marker 20 up Stockton Hill. We own a well, a 10-gallon a minute well. With that 10-gallon a minute well, I can irrigate 5 acres of hemp, not a problem. So I'm kind of questioning your water usage too. Are you talking about using drip lines and underground poly pipe like we do, bubblers and drip lines and stuff like that? Basically, because of the pandemic and all that, the hemp industry fell flat since we were first able to get our permit. So we didn't expand to our full amount of acreage because there's no processing plants open to process our material. So part of our land wouldn't qualify, I guess, under some of your regulations. How you could come up with an arbitrary 2 acres, I mean, most people's lawns are bigger than 2 acres. Anyway, I'm totally against this. If this goes into effect, you're literally killing our dream. I'm 65 years old. I plan on living on that farm for the rest of my life. My son works 50 hours a week landscaping, installing pools. I'm on Social Security. We could not be more all in. Every resource, every spare minute we use to build that farm. And if this INA goes into effect, that literally kills us. Anyway, I thank you all for coming down and listening to us. And realistically, we heard about this pretty much from a letter in the mail from the in our water bill. So our county and city officials, I don't believe, did a very good job of getting the word out that this was even happening. Anyway, thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you.
Up next is Dr. Mark Berry, then Dale Williams, then John Kinney.
Good afternoon, board. Thank you all for your service to Mojave County. I'd like to say happy Veterans Day to all my fellow veterans. And thanks to our first responders out there, the police. First of all, I'm in support of this, and here's why. My understanding during the break when I asked a question about if this goes into effect, the people that currently have farms that live here, that are part of our communities here in Mojave County, would they be affected with what they're doing now? The gentleman with 3,000 trees or whatever. And I was informed that no, it would not. This INA affects only expansion or new people coming, or people expanding here, or new companies coming in, foreign entities coming in, and growing agricultural products or whatever. So if it doesn't affect the current people that are here, farmers, cattle ranchers, or whatever, then it appears to me to be a moot point to argue that this is going to somehow affect them. If it doesn't, only if they intend to expand, which means using more of the water than what they're currently claiming that they're using. Secondly, the focus should be, I believe, on solutions to this. Now, I know there's data on both sides and people, I'm not getting into all of that. That can be the roundtable thing that several speakers have talked about, getting together and getting the right, that absolutely, that should be done. But anybody that's been to a university, and I've been to several, knows that if you're a resident of the state, you are charged one fee to attend college. If you're an out-of-state student, your fees are usually about 4 times as much. These same types of things are easily doable for foreign companies coming in. You want to come in and do business here and grow, fine, but it's going to cost more. And one of those ways are, I haven't heard anything about the technology that we've had for decades. Atmospheric water generators. My wife and I are putting in 2 units on our property up on Hualapai Mountain, $36,000 a piece. These are medium-sized units that produce right out of the air 2,000 liters of water a day. Now, when I was in the military, we used them in the Marine Corps. We used them for desert operations and special forces and force recon, where they would pull in, instead of bringing water buffaloes and spending the fuel and the diesel to haul these water buffaloes in and drag water out there to 3,000 soldiers. I'll finish right now. They would pull in 4 of these tractor trailers with these huge atmospheric water and produce 5,000 gallons a day each. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Dale Williams, then John Kinney, then Ron Foggin. Dale Williams. All right. John Kinney. After John Kinney will be Ron Foggin, then Mayor Ken Watkins.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here to listen to us today. I sincerely appreciate it. I really appreciated the presentation that was made at the beginning of this meeting, and I have no reason to question the validity of the numbers that I saw. I understand why many of these farmers and people that work for them are upset about this. I used to work in a coal-fired power plant, and you know that went by the wayside, and I had to find a new career. The career I found was in water. I think about, first of all, I've had family here since 1936. My dad had the first hotel in Kingman with a swimming pool. Been here a very, very long time, and I love this little community, and I want to see it flourish. We are in the midst of a drought that hasn't been seen in about 1,200 years, according to some very credible experts. Farming in this desert right now is probably not the best idea in the world. I'm not saying that the farmers aren't being responsible in the methods that they use, as responsible as they can be, but I don't think that we can afford to expand on that. I support this INA fully. I want to see Kingman flourish and be around for a long time. I also want to thank Travis Langenfelter for keeping us all in the community up to date as to when these meetings were going to be and his input on it. He's been a real valuable asset, and I sincerely appreciate Travis for his push and his effort into, trying to basically save our water. So anyhow, I thank you all.
Thank you.
Up next is Ron Foggin, then Mayor Ken Watkins, then Luis Vega.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciated being able to sit through, listen to the testimonies, the presentations. Well done. I, along with my team in the city, are responsible for supplying water to approximately 50,000 people. We also supply water to hundreds of commercial and industrial businesses. So we take water pretty seriously in the city of Kingman. And I want to thank Gina Cobb, who's not here, Senator Borelli, who is here, for their efforts to create some kind of water legislation that would protect our aquifer moving forward. Unfortunately, after 6 years, Representative Cobb was not able to successfully get water legislation to help us protect our aquifer. And that was blocked by other state elected officials that wouldn't allow her legislation to go forward. I think unfortunate for all of us in Mojave County, or at least those that depend on groundwater. When I first took over as city manager, one of the very first things that was set on my plate was this water issue. I was extremely shocked to find out that a dry state like Arizona did not have any water regulations for groundwater. And so I was happy with what Representative Cobb and the City Council and the Mojave County elected officials and team members were trying to do to protect our water. And it seems to me to be short-sighted in an effort to not have any kind of regulations or rules with regards to our groundwater. I've been talking to one of the nut farms, and I received an email that I want to share a portion of. The email says, "The goal of our farm is to grow as much nutritious food as possible with fewer resources as possible and create full-time, meaningful work for all our employees. Like others in this community, we want to ensure long-term, sustainable groundwater supply. One of the most important factors of our decision to grow pistachios in the Hualapai Valley is they require much less water than row or feed crops typically do." So ultimately the question is that it is wonderful to have farms with this kind of ethic, but we have no rules in place to stop row or feed crops from coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Mayor Ken Watkins, then Luis Vega, then Nick Ponder.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Watkins, Mayor of the City of Kingman. Once again, we welcome you to Kingman and thank you for considering our request to form an INA for the Hualapai Valley Basin. And of course, again, echo what has been said already about thanking all those who have served, our veterans, and of course, thank those who are currently serving and protecting our freedoms. I was born and grew up in Phoenix, and I love the desert. I remember in my elementary years of school going on a field trip to Pueblo Grande ruins on Washington, just past 44th Street. We learned that the people that had once lived there were called the Hohokam Native American tribe. Archaeologists think they lived in that area from 450 AD to 1450 AD. They were experts in irrigation and had the most extensive canal and irrigation system in the New World for their time. They used water from the Salt River. The Hohokam had to deal with the Salt River flooding in the spring and early summer and hardly any flow in the end of the year. Their society thrived because of their proximity to the Salt River. They left the area, one theory being a long-lasting drought of 75 years. In Yuma, we have a thriving agricultural community, supplying our nation with a majority of winter vegetables. They get their water from the Colorado River. We too find ourselves living in times of a severe, multi-year drought. But we do not have a river to take water from. We have the Hualapai Valley Basin. It is literally the lifeblood of our community. We can theorize all we want on how much water is there, but no one knows for sure. The high desert is not the place to have commercial agriculture, especially with no proximity to a river. Finally, back in 2007, ranching and agriculture was negligible as a user of water from our aquifer. Now in 2021, commercial agriculture is using 60% or more of the water drawn from the Hualapai Valley Basin. I hope we can learn from the past. We support an INA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Luis Vega, then Nick Ponder, then Senator Sonny Borelli.
Good afternoon. My name is Luis Vega. I'm a longtime Mojave County resident and a retired geologist. I've worked on a number of water studies in all of the basins in Mojave County, and I was really happy to hear the willingness of the agriculture sector to share information. It has not been that way in the past. As a matter of fact, some of the studies that I did, there was essentially no communication. So I'm really happy that communication is, hopefully will be established between the different stakeholders, and we can get good data into the studies. Now, speaking of the studies, the slide that you had on recharge into the basin had areas in the center or close to the center of the basin where you said there was recharge. My experience is there's almost no recharge near the center of the basin because of the very fine sediments and the caliche layers. So I would hope that you have data that supports recharge from the center of the basin. And then your projections are based on no growth in any sector. So the projection that you made for 100 years of water is that the city of Kingman would not grow, which I think is not realistic. I would imagine that the regulators that worked on the Colorado River Compact 50 or 60 years ago thought they had good data to make their projections. And now 50 years, 60 years later, we're suffering with the decisions they made. So I would hope that you would look at all the data, you would gather all of the real data from cooperating stakeholders, and take a serious look at the studies that are being made, and hopefully you'll make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Nick Ponder, then Senator Sonny Borelli, and then Becky Gross.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Ponder. I actually represent Mojave County at the state capitol. So I just want to thank you for coming up here and thank you for the opportunity. I cannot say anything better than the locals who have come here and lent their voices to their experience and their concerns regarding the status of the aquifer. I do, however, want to respond to a couple of things that I've heard in this meeting as well as the meeting on September 20th in an effort to correct the record. First, we've heard the DOR should allow farmers and interested parties to work this issue out. We've heard farmers say and make comments that they've been left out of the process. This is factually inaccurate. Since 1980, actually, when Bruce Babbitt, governor, signed in the Groundwater Act of 1980, he actually said at the time, as they walked out of the door, out into the sunlight, he said, "Now we need to talk about rural Arizona." That's 42 years ago. Since that time, and in the past, feverishly in the past decade, there have been efforts to address groundwater challenges at the state capitol. And at every turn, legislators like Sonny Borelli, Regina Cobb, Leo Biasucci, and other interested parties have been stifled in doing that by the folks that represent your industries. If you would like for this to happen, if you would like for these conversations to happen, I would encourage you to communicate that to those individuals who represent you at the state capitol so that we can have some progress on groundwater management in the state of Arizona. One other thing that I would like to say is that I heard comments about accessing state funds to recharge the aquifer. Specifically, at the September 20th meeting, there was a reference to the WIFA bill that was just passed last year, funding $1 billion for water. Only about $240 million of that is for rural Arizona, just FYI, for those of you in the room. However, there's a provision within the statute that I left over at my desk, or at my chair, but there's a provision in the statute that prioritizes how those projects could be funded. And one of the priorities in Arizona Revised Statute 49-1274, subsection B3C, says that that the priority shall evaluate the reliability and long-term security of the water supply to be developed through the project. So I ask you, how is the county, who is in charge of taking care of the fine tax resources that you provide them, how are they able to get state investment to prove long-term security of that water supply if there is no protection in place underlying it, to ensure that somebody else cannot come in and withdraw the water that they've paid to put in the aquifer? So I just want to provide some clarity in those areas. The last thing that I'll say is that I believe that there is sufficient statutory authority for you guys to create an INA, just as there was when you did so with the Hualapai Valley Basin in 1982, when you take into consideration existing irrigation as well as the other users in the valley. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Up next is Senator Sonny Borelli, and then Becky Gross.
Yes, thanks for having this today on a Veterans Day weekend. If you didn't, I would be still stuck in Phoenix, so thank you very much. And thanks for coming out here on a great weekend. This is Mojave County. We like our guns, and I doubt you're going to find a paper straw anywhere around here. But, regulations are supposed to make regular. supposed to make even and balance. And what we have here is an unbalanced playing field. When the AMAs were started years ago, as Mr. Ponder was saying, they left rural Arizona alone. They kept it off the map. They kept it out of the conversation because I would venture to say the big strategy is when they need more water, they know where they're going to come and get it. So this INA is here to protect what is the status quo now. Every farmer that's here now is grandfathered in. What we're trying to prevent is those other people coming in from foreign countries, other companies coming from foreign countries, so on and so forth, to come here and expand. Because when these people come in, they're going to come into this valley like locusts. And we all know what locusts do. They will strip the resources and then they're gone. And then what's left is what we have is dried up crops. And this is what we're trying to prevent. And you know, our farmers here have a vested interest in their own conservation, and they have done a phenomenal job in conservation. Matter of fact, Arizona is leading the conservation efforts, I think, more so than any other state in the union. But, you know, what we have here is a lot of unknowns. And when you have this many unknowns, you need to rule on the side of caution. And I think since there is really, your own analysis shows it's unsustainable for 100 years. And this is in current conditions with the simple what we have here now, which is actually no growth potential at all. We need to rule on the side of caution, and I ask that this be given favorable consideration for an INA for Mojave County. Now, I represent Mojave County, La Paz County, a portion of Yavapai County, and a portion of Maricopa County, which is Wickenburg. So actually, they gerrymandered my district to give me a little bit of Wickenburg in there. So actually, when I dress like this, I finally blend in my district because I live in Lake Havasu. And so my district protects 3/4 of the west coast of Arizona. And we do not have the luxury of the water off the Colorado River. So when the Colorado River project was started years ago, that was basically to feed the thirsty city of Phoenix. But when that gets short and they start needing water, they're going to come after ours. We already saw that this last legislative session when they went after the Harquahala aquifer. Gina Cobb, myself, and Leo Biasucci had to fight like crazy to protect just the aquifers in my district, which is Harquahala, because the big developers in the East Valley want our water, and they will come and get it no matter how they want it. They're going to get it, and we have to stand strong. This is why this INA needs to pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. The last speaker on our list tonight is Becky Gross.
Hi, my name's Becky Gross. My family is 5th generation rancher. My son is 6th generation rancher here in Mojave County. I can't understand why everyone is attacking agriculture. Why are we always going after the agriculture? How about the subdivisions? There's 4 subdivisions that's intact right now, and the minimum is 250 houses. Each house for 2 people is 6,000 gallons per month usage. Why aren't we going after some of these subdivisions that is coming into our county? We need to stop that subdivision stuff and let our community have our county. We ranch, we work with the farmers, we take care of the wildlife, we take care of our waters, we don't waste it. And there's a gentleman earlier saying how the city lets their water run. We check our waters every day or every other day to make sure all of our waters are together, and so does the farmers. But these subdivisions is taking more water than the farms are, than the ranchers are. So you guys need to start looking at that entity too. And there's a lot that's on the Board of Supervisors that has subdivisions that's going in. So I'm against the INA, and I'm with the farmers and the ranchers that we don't need it. look at their numbers, together with the farmers and all, and do a roundtable with them, do a roundtable with the ranchers, and see where our waters are going and how much we do use. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other in-person comment cards? Is there anybody else? Last call for in-person comment cards. All right, seeing none, let the record reflect that no one else in person wishes to speak. Moving on to our virtual speaker card. Do we have any? I'm seeing no. Last call for virtual speaker cards. All right, seeing none, no one has indicated that they wish to speak or provide comment virtually. So let the record reflect that. Moving on to telephone. Do we have any telephone participants? No. Let the record reflect that we have no telephone comments. And call to overflow. Do we or have we ever had an overflow room? Okay. Let the record reflect that we have never had an overflow room for this meeting. So as I mentioned earlier, written comments may be submitted until 5 p.m. on November 18th, 2022. If you would like to submit written comments after the close of the hearing, but no later than 5 p.m. on November 18th, 2022, please fax or email them to Sharon Scantlebury, Department Docket Supervisor. Her fax number is 602-771-8686, and her email address is scantlebury@azwater.gov. And as I've mentioned, her business cards with her contact information are at the front near the entrance and will also be on the slide presentation on the last slide, which we will see shortly. So thank you very much to all of you for participating in this process. Your comments will be considered by the director of the department. Information related to today's hearing will be posted on ADWR's website at the address shown on, not this screen, but the next screen. And we also have the QR code where that information will be posted. Once available, the recording from today's hearing will also be posted online, which you can access through the QR code. As I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing, all written comments should be addressed to Sharon Scantlebury, and I've provided her contact info. The director must issue written findings within 30 days after the public hearing. In making his determination, the director shall give full consideration to public comment and to the recommendations made by local political subdivisions pursuant to ARS 45-435, Section C. If the director finds that an INA should be created, the director must issue an order designating the INA. The director's findings and order must be published in a newspaper of general circulation in each county where the proposed INA is located once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, as well as file a true copy map depicting the boundaries of the INA with the Mojave County Recorder. The director's order is effective when published for the second time. The findings and order are subject to request for review or rehearing and actions for judicial review. Any motion for review or rehearing must be made within 30 days of the second publication of the director's order, and the director may grant or deny the motion within 60 days thereafter pursuant to ARS 45-114, Section C. As I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing, this is where the comments should be addressed to Sharon Scantlebury. This is the contact information and also the website web address that I had mentioned, and the QR code, the famous QR code that I've mentioned several times. So this public hearing is now adjourned. I want to thank everybody for providing comments, and I especially want to say thank you and appreciate everybody participating on a Saturday, on a weekend, especially a holiday weekend. We've heard from quite a few veterans, and as a 2-time combat veteran myself, I want to echo the thanks to all who served this great country. So with that, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you and good night.